8U, 10U.
Bob Lokesy.
Yeah, hi, Rick. Bob Lokes. I've coached in the Western Hockey League for a number of years. Coached a couple of national under-18 teams. Coached pro for a few years, and started out like most coaches in minor hockey, and spent a lot of time doing that. And then since I quit coaching, I've been mentoring coaches and a few players.
Thanks, Bob. Dom, your mic's off. Can you give a quick intro if you're, oh yeah, okay, good. And then Jordan.
Hi, yeah, Dominic Pittus. Coached the last year in the Calgary Flames organization, and currently taking over as a hockey director at a prep school in California, and coaching my girls teams in San Jose.
Thanks. Jordan?
Hi, Rick. I'm Jordan Fenton. I have coached minor hockey in Alberta for a while. Most recently was coaching midget AAA female in Calgary a couple seasons ago. And my day job, I'm a elementary school principal, and currently doing COVID case tracking for our school jurisdiction over the past couple months. So.
Thanks, Jordan. Let's go Tom, Matt, and then Tim Taylor. Tom, are you muted? Yeah. Okay, there you go.
No, I just turned it on. Yeah, Tom Malloy. I currently coach the women at SAIT. I've coached all three institutions in Calgary, men and women. And I've coached for the Red Bulls in Austria and all kinds of minor hockey.
And a long-time Shark, I might add.
A long-time Shark.
Matt, then Tim.
Yeah. Hey, Rick. I know Rick fairly well. We're in close proximity geographically, but we've talked many times, and we've had a few of his players come and play for Queen. So great to see you on this group here, Rick.
It's great to see you too.
Yeah. I kind of figured two of the three amigos would know each other, but wasn't sure.
Yeah. Good morning, Rick. I'm Tim Taylor, 12U youth hockey coach down in the States in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area.
Thanks, Tim. And I think that's it. We'll go back to, looks like Doug's on. Wally. Doug, do you want to maybe introduce yourself? It looks like he's on. Doesn't look like the mic's off. You know, Wally, Wally, you're muted. Kim, I know you know Rick, I'm sure. So just let me, Wally, are you, have you got Doug on there? And you're muted, Wally.
I just unmuted. Am I good now?
Yeah.
Okay, Doug's gonna hold off. He's got another meeting right now, so.
Okay.
But he's gonna come on at another later time. And Doug Shepard, just for everybody's information, he's a PEI guy. Worked at Andrews Hockey Growth. Al Ramsey, that was been introduced, Rick. He went to those schools, and he's making an influence in Massachusetts with a lot of what he's picked up there. So, you know, it's all good. So, Kim, welcome aboard. You know, I wrote down a whole bunch of things that came to mind, but my text blew up yesterday on Shifley's hit, so I've been responding to some things on that. But Tim, we'll let you see which way they want to go on the topics. But I know my big I wanted to get Rick on because I did know him, and he's written books and been you know, what I would call an expert on teaching, and particularly the Forecheck was one of his books was on the torpedo. And so I thought that might come up as a topic. And Rick, you said you've changed, you know, and I don't know if everybody's familiar with the torpedo. Tom Malloy has used it with most teams. If just you could put your hands up, visibly, how many of you are familiar with the conventional torpedo? Everybody pretty much. Bob, have you heard of it? Bob Laux?
I've
No?
heard of it, but I'm not familiar with it.
Al, have you heard of it?
Well, Wally, I was thinking before we get into that,
Yeah.
why don't we have a quick go around on the topic of the day, which would be the hit.
Okay.
Uh,
Good idea.
Whether it was a illegal hit, a suspendable hit. It was obviously a really tough hit to take and a tough one to watch. But maybe just have a quick go round again. I guess maybe we'll start at the top with Al.
Yeah. Just before we start, I wanted to mention Kim. I was concerned the women's final might end up ugly like that last night. And I watched the lead up game between Montreal and the Toronto team, and I was worried watching that game. The physicality in it was not friendly, and I thought, gee, they might cross the line and turn into the guys' game here. So go ahead, Tim. I think the two relate, the way you play the game and when you learn it and how it becomes about. But thoughts on that hit, I guess, Timmy.
Yeah. So why don't we just start at the top again? And Al, give it. If you didn't see it, obviously, you can take a pass. But Al, then Tom, then Bob.
Yeah, I saw the hit. I watched it a couple of times. From what I mean, I thought it looked legal. I don't know about necessary. It was a little bit. It was definitely a little bit late. It was definitely done with intent, I thought. But it didn't. It looked like his shoulder connected with his chest, and I don't know. I thought it was pretty hard, pretty vicious hit. Definitely a scary one to watch. That's for sure. Hope Evans is all right.
Tom. Oops, looks like we might did we lose you, Tom? No, you're muted, Tom. Sorry.
Yeah, I just his hands were down and everything, but you're allowed 2 or 3 strides. He took 10 strides. And that guy, I mean, he just blew him up. So, you can't be hitting guys like that. You got to have some idea of the safety of other guys.
Bob.
Yeah, I thought the hit itself may have been a legal hit barely, although I did think it was charging. I thought his total intent was not to prevent the goal. I think he knew he was going to be late. If you watch his stick, he's a right-handed player. His stick is on the right-hand side of his body. Just before he hits him, he changes the stick to the other side. The stick never gets on the ice where he could play the puck, and he just blows the guy up. I thought it was a totally unnecessary hit, and I thought it was vicious. I thought it was with intent, and I think he's lucky that he's only going to be allowed to be suspended for 5 games max. That's the kind of hit you got to get out of hockey. That's just senseless to me.
Yeah, Dom, then Jordan. Oh, you're muted, Dom and Jordan. That's good. Kim, you want to go ahead? You're muted as well. I got you muted anyway.
Well, I don't know whether I should ever be the expert on what's a legal body check, given I've never taught one. Yeah, I didn't watch the game. I'm still traumatized from the Leafs. So I just saw the hit on 7,000 different angles on Instagram. So I'm guessing you're not allowed to skate all the way down the ice and just annihilate someone unless, it looks like you're actually maybe going to play the puck. So that is my uneducated version of it, but didn't look legal. I looked legal, maybe, but maybe not necessary given the circumstance.
Dom, you want to weigh in? Your mic's off. He might have to step away. Jordan, go ahead.
Well, I think it comes down to the letter of the law versus the intent of the law. And I don't think that many of us will disagree that the intent of charging in penalties and things like that, is to take hits like that out of the game. And it's an era too late, I think, for that sort of thing. That would have been a highlight reel rock'em sock'em hockey video hit and would have been celebrated, but I don't know that it's going to be celebrated anytime soon. And it is one of those pieces that absolutely, Bob, that was the way that I saw the same thing, where his stick never touched the ice. So how could you ever claim that he was intending to touch it? And it goes back to, and I'll pick on Kim's Leafs with this too, is that if you watched the body language of Scheifele through the game and his frustration level, I think that led into it as much. And if you watched your Leafs the other night, their body language after the first couple, well, even the first goal was scored, it was like, oh no, here we go again. And even right down to when the Leafs scored their goal. If you watch their goal celebration, there's still 1:30 left. And you'd think that maybe that would have given them a little lift. But Nylander doesn't even raise his arms. And when his other teammates come around him, he just kind of skates away from them. So it's interesting.
Matt and Tim?
Yeah, again, the benefit of going after so many vaunted experts, I don't have too much of substance to add. I agree. I think that it's all contextual. I think he did take a good run. If you were to just freeze the shot of the hit, or when it happened, or even just a fraction of a second beforehand, it might have looked okay. But take into context the run he took, the angle he took, the timing of the game, the score of the game, all of it. I think that adds up. And even if there hadn't been an injury, and I saw something this morning to say that Evans was back in his hotel room and might be okay. But even without the injury, I think it was just a risky play. And with the heightened sensitivity towards concussions and whatnot, I think that's got to be taken into account. And so I think there's enough there to suspend, all things considered, when you take it into context. And I guess the league's got to decide, okay, are we going to let this go? And or is it going to get out of hand if they don't do anything, right? So I think there's enough there for them to suspend if they're worried about what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Jim, yeah.
Yeah. I saw the clip on social media and read some commentary on it, but I totally agree with Bob's assessment of the hit.
And Wally, did you want to weigh in? Your mic's off, Wally. Oh, Sammy's there too. We'll go Sammy.
Sammy Joe, did you have a thought on that? I've got a big picture thought.
So I did. I'll go first because I am on another conference all day, but I did want to come on and say specifically hi to Rick, because I feel like we haven't seen each other in a long time. And I'm sad that I'm missing the one that you're on. So you're going to love this group. They're amazing. And hi to everybody else. Just a quick hello. And I have to run. But I did want to comment on this because I am a huge Winnipeg Jets fan. So it was hard to see my team do something like that. And Billy's a big Habs fan, so we obviously differed on the opinion. But I think, how does it translate to this specific group? And what I've learned from this group is, what are kids going to look at? And that's hard because, I don't want my daughter seeing that. I don't want them to think that that's normal. And both Kim and I played with Jillian Apps. She played in college with Appsy, and I played on the national team. And she did this once a game. And girls were carted off on stretchers. And, is it right or wrong? She had, always that defenseman flying around the net with their head down. And to me, the Montreal Canadiens guy shouldn't have gone into the red zone with his head down. I mean, you got to have some awareness too. And nor should the Jets guy have just run him over. I mean, so there's two wrongs that create this awful scene on the ice. I think it's what's wrong with hockey. There's no reason a check needs to be finished like that. And, in women's hockey, it shouldn't be finished like that, but it's still, yeah, it'd be then scary to play out there knowing that you could, and for all of you guys that have played men's hockey in various different eras, this is probably what it was like, and probably I can't even imagine being on the ice with that type of speed and that type of body flying at you. And we actually had a scenario at the board of the Canadian Women's Hockey League where 2 teams protested that they would no longer play if Jillian Apps was on the ice because they were fearful and they had to go to work the next day. So we, as a board, it was a really tough decision to have to make. And so we ended up trying to work with the player rather than, take her right off the ice, because there was no suspensions the game allowed for those kind of things. She got a penalty on the play, but that was it. It was legal what she was doing. And so this is kind of technically legal. You're preventing a goal. So anyways, just my opinion. And I'm sure all of you guys, I synopsize exactly what you guys have said as well. I think some great comments. So thank you. And Rick, good to see you and good to see everybody.
And thanks, Sammy. We should go back to Dom. And Dom, your mic's off if you wanted to weigh in. And if he's stepped away, we can always go then to you, Wally.
Okay.
It looks like he may have had to step away or something. So
Okay.
go ahead, Wally. I got lots of comments as well. I agree with a lot of what's been said. Go ahead.
I see the big picture, and I'm just concerned. First of all, the big picture, the playoffs are different than the league play. I really didn't mind watching league play, but the intensity of league play isn't that good. It's not that ramped up as it is in the playoffs. So I believe they've got a problem in officiating is different in the playoffs. Players' mentalities are different. And I texted Cal Botterill about where is emotional control, because I think a number of people have pointed out, as Jen did, about the frustration Shifley showed during the game. And that's fundamental sports psychology, is emotional control in terms of being able to perform well, whether it's the Leafs' overall game, reacting to a game situation, and officials. I'm curious what's going to happen moving forward. And quite frankly, I'm worried about the health of the game, because is there going to be a retribution period here? And the league has a challenge. And I don't give a damn what they do. I care about what happens with all of you and the associations you work with, Al Ramsey in particular. I was surprised at Al's statement, and he could legitimize it. It was a good hit. And to me, there's 2 things that you have to look at. I've written documents and submitted it to the Hockey Canada officials group and said, make this clear. It's about the intention and the degree of force. And you have to make the calls, ref, accordingly. If the intention is to intimidate or injure, and you've got to develop that line. Well, that last night, to me, was an example of crossing it. And I feel bad for the injury. I feel bad for Shifley, but I worry about the game. And that kind of thing influencing players growing up, and the numbers of kids leaving competitive hockey to go to house hockey is amazing. There probably are more kids playing house hockey now than competitive hockey at the ages between 12 and 16. So I think that's a little disconcerting. And on the guys' side, what are we looking for in hockey players? What do we want them to become? And just the safety and mentality of the game and the intent of the game. And in pro sports, it's entertainment. So they'll decide what they're going to do. And the key thing here is going to be the marketing of it in the end, not the safety of the athletes, number one, but in minor hockey. And it has to be the safety of the athletes. So that's all I've got to say, Tim.
Yep. Dom, are you back with us at all? And if he's not able to, I'll just sort of weigh in. There's so many things. It's a very interesting and difficult discussion point. I would agree with several things. Number one, it was vicious and hard to watch. Number two, I would say it's easy to infer that there was an intent to injure, which would fall, within the bounds of a penalty or suspendable offense, I think, in the NHL. There's nothing in the NHL rulebook, nor in the Hockey Canada rulebook, about intent. You have to try to get the puck when you're trying to hit somebody. USA Hockey's taken that step, and I think it's a really good one. But there's nothing in the rulebook that says you have to try to get the puck when you're trying to hit somebody. I think it's a classic case. This is going to be a classic case of what we talked about this book, The Tough Stuff, last week and past weeks by Cody Royal. One of the points he makes in his book about decision making by coaches is it's often subject to what he calls resulting, and that being the quality of coaching decisions is so often evaluated on the outcome of the decision, not the decision-making process. And that's what's going to happen here with the NHL. Because there was an injury on the ice, I believe he will get suspended. But I will say this, even in this playoffs, I have seen worse hits. And you can go back to Ovechkin in game 1 against Boston. He left his feet to level Krejci, didn't even get a penalty. In this situation, and I watched this with Scheifele probably 6-7 times, he did not leave his feet before impact. The point of impact, which I think Bob or someone made, was the chest. He did not take 10 strides. He was coasting the last 6-8 feet. It was borderline charging. But because there was an injury, they gave him a penalty. And like I said, it's a classic case of resulting. And I agree. These are the type of hits that need to be out of the game because they don't take player safety into account. But I've seen a lot worse hits, and this is what they get because they don't call the cross checks to the head and face by the Montreal defenseman in round 1 against Toronto. A couple of times easily suspendable offenses. Ovechkin's hits early in the playoffs, no penalty, no suspension. If you're going to let that stuff go, somebody's going to break a neck, somebody's going to get killed, and they got to get these hits out of the game. So it's a really tough one. I don't think it was an illegal hit. So really, really sort of difficult situation. It took me way back to Pat Quinn on Bobby Orr in like 1970, maybe 69, 70. Equally as thunderous a hit. And I was a big Leafs fan there, but I was livid at Pat Quinn because he hit Bobby Orr so viciously hard. But again, it was a pretty legal hit, if I remember correctly. But that's kind of a sidebar. It's just a tough thing until they get away from, until they start calling the boarding penalties, the checking from behind, like Montreal's Byron on Engvall in round 1, should have been boarding, should have been checking from behind, no penalty, no suspension. Until they start going down that line, you're going to have these incidents. So I'm sort of right on the fence on this one, although I don't think it was a penalty by the rule book, except for the fact that you could say he was intending to injure. And that's, that can be a major penalty, obviously. So that's
I think Al Ramsey had his hand up for a while there, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on your comment and then again on Tim's about the legality of it. If we're talking about it in terms of USA hockey rules, it's 100% illegal.
Yeah.
They introduced language into the rule book, I think it was the year before last, about the purpose of a check being to separate the player from the puck and not to intimidate. stick's got to be on the ice. Like they got specific language in there that would make that hit 100% illegal, right? Not even a question. So, but I think what I'm getting at and where I was coming from in my comment is like are we looking at this by what's legal in USA hockey, youth hockey, or in terms of the NHL and what's allowed and what passes, right? And again, I don't think it was a good hit. I think he should have let up and everything, but I'm kind of on with Tim. I think it's kind of borderline, but yeah, USA youth hockey, and that's the problem, right? Is that the kids are all watching, coaches are watching this, kids are watching this, and it's supposed to be different in terms of the youth hockey game. So, but they do have that language in our rule book. I don't know about Hockey Canada's, but for sure in ours.
Totally agree, Al, and I think Hockey Canada needs to take that step. Bob?
Well, I agree that the hit was borderline legal, but my thoughts on it were he knew he wasn't going to prevent the goal there. He was going to be too late. Evans was in a vulnerable position. He had dipped his shoulder to come around the net to tuck the puck in, and we always hear about don't hit a player in a vulnerable position. Well, is that not exactly what he did? And I really believe that he was coming the last from the blue line in with the intent of hitting him as hard as he could hit him, because I think he didn't think he could get there to prevent the goal, and the player was in a vulnerable position. So I'm a little bit with you, Tim, but I'm a little bit more the other way that he could have prevented that hit. He knew the player was going to be in a vulnerable position, and he blew him up anyways.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Bob. And like you say, I definitely agree it would fall under the intent to injure. It was, I gotta say, I don't think it was charging, but anyway, Dom, you're back. Did you want to weigh in on the hit last night?
Yeah, sure. And again, I apologize. I apologize if somebody's already made this point. My daughter showed me the hit, and the first thing that came to mind was a lesson that I learned early in my career is, so it's a 5-2 or 5-3 game. Like the game's essentially over, and the guys try to score an empty net goal. Like
it was 4-3, Dom, at the time.
4-3. Okay. Yeah. Well, then again, so then obviously, my bad. I mean, I was going to say if it was 5-3, like you got to know somebody's coming. Like you got to know that somebody is, probably going to try to send a message in a series. If it's 4-3, then, what Luxie was saying there about, knowing exactly what he was doing. And I would agree on that point. Then again, if the game was out of reach, and the player was just trying to, pad stats or whatever else have you, like you have to have an awareness when you're out there. Like I learned that early, in my pro career, end of a game, and you're trying to get something and somebody, take some liberties with you. But no, I would agree. I mean, he knew exactly what he was doing, and there was no intention of playing the puck.
Yeah, and it's just, I think if he actually had his focus on trying to prevent the goal, he might have actually been able to do it if he had dove at the puck as he was coming around. He was just close enough. If he would have dove to try to prevent the goal, he might have been able to. So clearly his intent was, I think he's going to score, so I'm going to level him. And I totally agree that is worthy of a suspension. So anybody else on that? And we could.
I got a point here. Rick, we talked a bit about Forecheck, and you talked about the German head coach who you coach at Trinity College, and you talked about the torpedo. And this isn't really forechecking, it's back checking, but it relates to the degree of contact and going straight at people. And I'm just curious about your take on that happening, Rick.
Well, aside from kind of that forechecking point that the German national team coach was making, my big thing is I just feel like it's a horrible lack of respect for the opposition, this hit. And going back to Sammy Joe's point just about we played in a different time. Like when we played back in the 70s and 80s, no one was traveling that fast. And, these guys are flying a lot faster than we ever played. And I just think that hit is just a lack of respect for opposition. And I think that, a big part of the problem in the NHL too is the big mid-ice hits that are concussing guys and guys not being able to make that micro adjustment to not take someone's head off and hit them in the shoulder. And I think that there could have been adjustment in that play to not level him and to use the expression blow him up. So that's my piece about the hit last night. I just wish that opposition opponents had better respect for each other when it comes to situations like this. And that is to say, there was still a minute left in the game when he tucked that in the corner, so it wasn't just in the last couple seconds. But nonetheless, I think there was an intent to injure in it. And just to make the point too on Tony Soderholm, who's the head coach of the German national team, played for me here, and we've kept in touch over the years. He played at UMass Amherst and then played for IFK in Helsinki for years and years. But he's been coaching in Germany and will lead their Olympic team next year. And we were talking about forechecking, I don't know, about 6 months ago or a year ago, and he said, Rick, he says, stop teaching your forecheckers to angle. And I'm like, what do you mean? That's what we do. He says, no. He says, when you tell your guys to angle the puck a certain way, all you're doing is giving the defenseman more time to make a play. He says, make sure your first guys, your F1, is going straight at the defender so that he has to make a decision which way to go. And it will take the time and space away from him to make that play. And I thought it was a really good point. And, Wally, you and I were talking about this the other day. There's still going to be a situation where a defenseman makes a move one way or another if you're going straight at them and you end up angling then. But I thought, again, Tony's point to take the time and space away from those defenders right away was very good.
Tim, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Wally. Yeah, I was going to comment on something. I can't remember what it is now because I started thinking about the forecheck. Oh, I know what it was, but we'll go back to the forecheck later. One of the tough parts about this hit, and I totally agree. Like the USA Hockey's got it going the right way. Like if you don't show an intent to try to get the puck, then really any hit is a penalty. Like I think that's a good way to go. But the problem with this hit and making it a suspendable hit because it's intent to injure, weigh that off against, if we want to say the Pat Quinn hit that was legal as well. Any hit where you demolish somebody is the terminology, like Ovi did to Krejci in game 1 of the playoffs. How is that not intent to injure? And this is intent to injure. They're exactly the same hits. And Ovi's hit was technically charging because he left his feet before he hit him. So how does he get away with that? No penalty, no suspension, but this is suspendable. Like, and it's intent to injure. Don't tell me he wasn't trying to hurt Krejci as much as he could hurt him. Like, I don't think any player really wants to hurt a player and put them out of the lineup. But when you get into intent or not intent to injure, like it's a pretty muddy area, a really muddy area. And how do you balance those two without hitting out of the game altogether, which I don't think we should. Wally maybe does, but I don't think we should. But that hit was vicious, no player safety in mind. It was totally intent to demolish the player. I agree. Let's get it out of the game, make it suspendable. But why does Ovi get away with it? Why do Montreal defensemen get away with cross-checking people to the head and the back without even a penalty, without even a suspension? It's a tough line to walk. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, Tim, I agree with everything you just said, but I do think in the rule, unless I misinterpret the rule, they changed it about a year ago that said if a player comes from distance, it doesn't say anything about striding. It says if he comes from distance and hits the player. And if you watch him, he was coming back hard till about the blue line. And I
Oh,
think
yeah.
there he realized he wasn't going to get there. He glided the rest of the way. And I think his reason to gliding was he knew the goal was going to be scored, and I'm going to hit you, and you're going to pay the price for scoring a goal. And, I think by the rule it is charging, and the player's in a vulnerable position.
Sorry, I totally can see you might be right there, Bob, but I'll still say the same thing. Ovi, exactly the same thing in game one.
I agree
Nothing.
with you.
So it's a tough thing. Go ahead, Wally.
Yeah, I'm confused because coaching the female game and then watching the NHL the last few years and listening to Ray Bennett do a presentation on St. Louis checking stick on puck. And I've emailed that presentation out with video that he shared. And they had so many situations in NHL games that he had edited where they could have blown a guy up, but they got the puck, stick on puck, through hips, through hands, technically. And when I watched that, I took that video and added it to checking clinics for minor hockey. So when you use the term hitting, there's no connotation here of the game and the puck. And if St. Louis was able to do that effectively in that era, and I've shared that video, I think, with everybody here. They've got to get back to aggressive checking versus finishing checks. Because when you finish your check, the game's so fast, you're likely going to be out of position. Now, that's the danger of the game today, 5-on-5 in the NHL. So my concern is the big picture, the kids growing up that are playing hockey, how they're affected, and coaches, how they're going to deal with making them play the way they could play to be their best. And I'm really hopeful the NHL can come to grips with how they deal with it and interpret it so that we avoid situations as high risk as we've seen during the playoffs. Because I just hope we get through these playoffs without any serious injury. But last night, to me, I'm watching the series moving forward with Winnipeg to see who's going to get even, because there's that unwritten code, Dominic, as you know. And one of the players in the post-game interview, he talked about they got his number. The whole team has his number. So this is the game of hockey. That's entertainment. It sells tickets, and there's nothing wrong with it. But there's a line they haven't really discovered, and it's sure different in the playoffs than it is during the season. And as long as we can keep perspective in place with minor hockey, and I'll take that right up to college hockey and even major junior hockey, because I think they do a pretty decent job there. But to aspire to play in the NHL and be gifted players, which most of them are now, and see where it's going, it's got to be difficult to survive and difficult to officiate. So that's all I've got to say on it. But Rick, I thought it might dovetail into the forecheck. Bob Laux, you got another point here. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Again, Wally, I have a little bit of a disagreement. I think you have to finish checks. When you say that you take yourself out of the play, I disagree with that. I think that if you're checking properly, stick on puck, making contact, and coming off your check on the defensive side, you're not taking yourself out of play. You're eliminating the other player, and you're coming off on the defensive side. You've left your team in a 4-on-4 situation. And if everybody is doing their jobs, I don't see where you're taking yourself out of the play whatsoever. And the purpose at the NHL level or major junior level, college level, is to finish checks and take a toll on your opposition so the cumulative effect wears them down. It's a different game than minor hockey game. And because they do it at the NHL, doesn't mean kids should be doing the same thing. It's just like when kids see you drinking, does that mean it's okay for them to drink? No. It's up to parents and coaches to tell kids, this is what you do at the Bantam level, or this is what you do at the midget level. What they do at the NHL level is not what you're doing here. So getting back to the checking point, I don't think you're eliminating yourself from a play when you finish a check properly.
Bob, I understand the theory. I totally agree with you. Taught properly, body checking can work. And it is a part of the game. The line of how much you do that, I think female games playing with that line. And of course, it's not manly, but they're going to struggle with that over time in terms of where it's going to go. So it's just a dilemma facing the game today. Quite frankly, I'm more excited about watching the Russia-Canada game today at noon out here because it's big ice. But looking at the playoffs, and I sent out a highlight of 3 hits that they were celebrating, none of which were penalties, none of which were for the purpose of gaining the puck. 2 guys running 1 guy. That's what's happening. So it's pretty tough for parents and fans to say, oh, I really want to play hockey. It's exciting to cheer. You're not out there getting hit. And you're not out there fighting. So that's it. Tim.
So I was going to follow up on the finishing checks part of it. And again, there's distinctions to be made. And I think the NHL now has sort of like 1 second, not a rule, but guideline. And Elliot Friedman was talking about it on the show last night with respect to a different hit, that if it's later than 1 second after the puck is gone, then you could be in trouble. And I think that's a sort of reasonable guideline. Ken Dryden is offering in his book, as we've talked before, if the puck's gone, there can't be any contact because too often the player's in a vulnerable position. And I really think that would be another good addition for Hockey Canada rules for minor hockey is, like we're saying, take the USA lead and you have to attempt to get the puck. And if the puck is gone, no contact can be made. I think that would be great for minor hockey. Now, we're talking 2 different animals here, minor hockey and the NHL, but they kind of have that 1 second rule now in the NHL guideline anyway. And this was clearly sort of within the 1 second time frame, but I think we sort of universally agree that it was too vicious and too much disregard for the other players' well-being that it probably should be suspendable. So I don't know. I think we maybe have exhausted that and can move on to some forecheck talk unless somebody wants to add some more. All right, so let's move on to forechecking a bit. And I guess I'll maybe initiate it going back to your comment, Rick, about your former student saying stop angling and start going straight on, as is almost always the case for me in hockey. It's not always this or always that. There's a time and a place to be straight on pressure, and there's a time and a place where angling is not just appropriate, but it's the preferred method. And part of it falls to what are you trying to accomplish with your forecheck. So I don't agree with his statement, stop teaching angling, because angling is critical for a lot of situations in the game, including forechecking, but it's not a blanket thing. It's a read and react thing for me.
Agreed.
Rick, I just wanted to mention when you mentioned that straight on, I watched Germany play, and they were in a 1-2-2. They weren't necessarily angling. It was sort of a neutral zone trap 1-2-2 for. They had a 2-0 lead, and that surprised me because I was looking for this aggressive head-on play, and I think I texted you, that I had watched that, and then in the third period, they went to straight at the puck. They went to 2-1-2, which is straight at the puck. And so I just started to look at the nuances of it. And the other thing I got out of watching Germany, Tim, was I watched Seider, that 20-year-old from Germany. Yeah, he's a good player. He's a really good player. So go ahead, Rick, on the forecheck, because I know you were the torpedo expert. And for those of you here, I'm very familiar with the torpedo because I know Shannon Miller, who's done presentations to NHL coaches on it. And I also scouted the Swedes practice their torpedo in the one practice time they had. The entire practice was based on that 5-man system, and it was like unbelievable at practice. So I was quite fearful of it, and I wouldn't know how to play against it executed that well. But I'm not sure how it's evolved for you. And I know Tom Malloy has played with that torpedo, and I've always envisioned it to be sort of like a 2-1-2 or a 2-2-1, but terminology is terminology. They got to figure out what they're doing when they're out there. You give them the structure. So, Rick, go ahead if you don't mind.
Yeah, thanks. Just to kind of back up a little bit, I played for Tom Watt at the University of Toronto and played for some coaches that were big on what Tom taught. So I grew up playing man-on-man defense, very strict man-on-man defense in the zone, even to the point where we didn't even sag the high slot winger from the defenseman. We stayed right on him. And so, I've always kind of taught that to all my teams only because I think it develops defensive play skills. So, I kind of break it down. And again, this is very simplified, but I break it down to 3 different defensive things that you need to do in the zone. One is play a man coming out of the corner with the puck. Secondly, covering someone in the slot, or we'll call it, kind of in the house, because it's not just right in front of the goalie. And then covering a point man appropriately. So, those are the 3 skills that I teach inside man-on-man. But I feel even with my weakest players that they get better on their defensive play when they're being forced to cover one man and make sure he doesn't score. And I actually took that philosophy to the Brampton Thunder, where I had 7 or 8 candidates for the national women's team on the team. And I said, look, we're going to play man-on-man till Christmas time, just so that you all get better at playing a one-on-one in our zone. So, and it was nice to have a couple compliments, after we went to the zone defense about how those skills had progressed. So, take that then to the torpedo, where, to simplify that quickly, is you play kind of with 2 forwards or 2 strikers, 2 midfielders, and 1 defender. So you've actually got kind of 3 waves of players, kind of a soccer style, instead of having just forwards and defense. And so, the criticism of it is that you need to kind of have 2 really good 2-way centers to be your midfielders. But obviously there's defensemen that can step into that position, and there's forwards that can. But it dovetails nicely. It's easy to play man-on-man with that setup because you've still got kind of your 2 midfielders and your defender down low, and you've got your two torpedoes at the top covering the defenseman. And of course, the whole idea of the torpedo is that those torpedoes are flying the zone really quickly and pushing the play down the ice. So that's kind of a nice piece to that. Part of my philosophy on coaching is to simplify the team stuff for players, so that they're never out there going, where did coach say I was supposed to be in this situation? I want them to kind of feel the game naturally. And I think the way to do that is to make it as simple as possible. So sorry to give that kind of prelude to the forecheck piece, but for 20 years I taught what I call the 1-2-3 forecheck. The first man in goes right at the puck carrier and forces a pass. The third man in the zone, meaning the 1-2-3. So the third man takes the high slot. And I always kind of sold the second man as the only guy that has to think. He's the mongoose. And I call it the mongoose because mongoose can catch cobras in mid strike. So you have to be quick and anticipate. But I let my F2 go wherever he thinks the puck's going to go. So if he thinks it's going to go D to D, go right to the far defenseman. If he thinks it's going to come up the boards to the winger, go right to that winger. If he thinks that F1's going to create a turnover in the corner, you go right into the corner to pick the puck up. But that F2 person has to pick up wherever the puck's going to be. Like he's the puck hunter. So when we moved to the torpedo system, now it was great because I actually had 4 forecheckers, and I was allowed to kind of say, look, now we're going to make sure we take the D to D pass away, and we're going to take away the pass up the boards, and we're going to still have an F3 who is actually F4 in the high slot. And but my big issue with the torpedo, although I love it, is it's very difficult to be out recruiting players to a program and say, hey, I think you'd make a really good halfback in our system. And so you have to kind of sell this whole different nomenclature and system of play. And when you've got kids that you're recruiting that want to move on to junior and college hockey, they think this is going to be a detriment to their development because they're not playing kind of regular hockey. So I was trying to figure out how to kind of meld the two things together. And before the start of not this past season, because it was kind of just a practice season, but the season before, I decided that, I can teach our systems without the puck in 30 seconds. I'm just going to say to my players, whenever we don't have the puck, we're going to play man on man. So we're going to go and make sure that we pick up a man everywhere on the ice whenever we don't have the puck. So it's the same thing we're doing in the zone, but now we're doing it, on the forecheck, on the neutralized forecheck. And the idea is that we want to take away all of the passes available for the puck carrier. So if the puck goes in the corner, our first man is right on that man. We've got a second man going right to their other defenseman so that they can't go D to D. I got another forechecker going right to the boards and picking up the winger there, and then our 2 defenders really pick their other wingers wherever they might be, but they're responsible for those guys. So as long as no one gets beat one-on-one, and guys know that they can't be beat one-on-one because everybody's picking up a man. So this comes back to the whole Tony Soderholm saying, look, let's go right after the guy instead of angling. And Tim, back to your point, we still teach angling and those skills involved, but we tell our F1s to go right at the defenseman to make him make a decision. But if we're taking his passes away, then it's even a tougher decision for that guy to make. And someone once said to me, why let them bring the puck 200 feet down the ice when we have to go back 200 feet to score a goal? If we can get the puck back inside their blue line, I think we're doing our offense a big service and get more chances to score. And I would say that in our league with a last place, second to last place team, so we weren't as talented as some of the top teams. We were extremely effective on our forecheck and creating scoring chances by making it tough for the other team to move the puck whenever they had it. Did I cover all the things there, Wally?
Yeah, I just look at somebody's got their hand up. Whoops. Oh, it's Wally. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just, Dominic and I, the thing I get out of this, and I think Tom Malloy might have some comments on it. There's just no free play and thinking within the system. any system, whether it's 1-2-2 and you do this and you do that. And Dominic came up with what he experienced in with his female team playing in a tournament. Dom, which is the ultimate to me. Will they ever get there? Because they're just playing and doing it themselves without thinking about it with your direction. Dom, can you talk about that?
Yeah, I just looking through and, having played in Switzerland for almost a decade, DeVos played the Torpedo, so I'm very, very familiar with it. In regards to having, the two forwards, the midfielders in the fence, and, a couple comments, and I agree, and again, trying to oscillate between the pro game, which I just got out of, and then, kind of equate it back to minor hockey. I agree there needs to be pressure on the first guy coming in. I tend to disagree a little bit on not having a bit of a path to push them one way or the other. I think you talk about, two, being able to anticipate, and again, I'm not saying that you take a wide, path to be able to, but there has to be a little bit of push one way or the other, because otherwise the guys behind you are going to have to wait that extra second to be able to, and, players be able to move it so quick, they'll be able to play through you quick because you'll always be a step late. We call it the skinny. San Jose did it against us. I know McClellan and DeBoer, I think, were similar in that. We're the first guys hunting, the second guy is anticipating. Very, very similar in that regard. Now, kind of transitioning to the girls and how we did. So, I basically tried to simplify it, and I really agree with that point as far as simplifying. Basically, the 3 Ps was pressure, possession, and play. And so the pressure piece, and I put 2 players on, and basically I said, hey, it's a race to be number one, because I found that if I say 1-2, that they're, someone's always waiting. So it's a race to be number one. Number one's in there pressuring. Obviously, there's a read in that comes into play as far as that, where's the D, where's the D going, is his only option to wheel, and whatever it is. 3 above, same idea as you. I'm assuming 4 is a strong side pinch on your point, so 4 would be strong side, and then the 5, I would say, because there's teams that are going to blow somebody high all the time, and so you've got to be cognizant. If you're 5, you got to be cognizant of where, if there's somebody behind. And so again, we all know how fluid the game is, and I found, and again, it's a work in progress. Obviously, we'd have pucks go east-west, 1 and 2. Would have to become 4 or 5, and there wouldn't be the reload in the track through the middle, and then we'd be a little bit late, and there'd be breakaways. I mean, that was when teams, they started to hard rim around to try to catch us, and again, it's, to me, and the one thing I'll I'm a little bit wary of is, the man on man when not have the puck. The one thing you said, well, you just can't get beat 1-on-1. I think, as an offensive guy, hey, for sure you're going to have to fight through checks. But if I can draw somebody in and I can make a quick couple touches, there's going to be a lot of room to be able to be able to come in. So again, I guess my philosophy is a little bit different in regards to having layers in the defensive zone. And I know, we've played against a lot of teams in the American League where they were strictly man on man, that, but you knew that if you beat your man off the wall, you're going to get a chance. And you knew that if you moved it and you beat your guy off the wall, like the guy came in hard because the guys were pressuring hard, you moved it, you're able to get to the inside. And we worked on that small area play to be able to make those two quick passes, and now you're pretty much guaranteed to have a chance a lot of the time. So again, it's something we wrestled with continually with in the Flames organization. I know they made some changes. Bill Peters, when he was there, he would have the D pressuring, almost to the blue line if they were on guys, because they really wanted that pressure. And then when Troy Ward took over, had the D basically as like the Boston system, where the D would go no higher than the hash a lot of times. So as he was coming up, there was almost a handoff. So you had your centerman was so critically important. Now you think of Boston, they have some elite centermen, some of the best in the game, and Krejci and Bergeron. They were able to play that system. Calgary has some good pieces as well in Backlund and in Lindholm, but there was a little bit of a, there were some issues with it, right? And at our level, under the Peters era, it ended up like we had, I think it's Todd, I could be, it's one of the Woodcrofts that's in Bakersfield, was under McClelland and had an extremely active ozone. And he had D's, like you think of Ethan Bear and Caleb Jones and Bouchard that was there, and they were extremely active. So under Peters, it was, well, we're not playing man on man, but if the D start moving, then you've got to go with them. If you're a winger, you got to go with them. So it turned on man, like it turned into that after a low to high D to D, and now an activation, a Chicago roll. All of a sudden, we're in a man on man. And now we're just we're chasing around, and we'd have extended possessions, and then they would get ozone changes, and then it was a nightmare that way. So, I guess that's where my hesitation is with the man on man. Personally, I think obviously personnel plays a role in the strong center, but I use the example of, why would you want to have Johnny Gaudreau around the front of the net, right? Like you get a D that comes down. You get, an active D that gets down, and now Johnny Gaudreau is the guy that has to box out. So, for me, having the D close to the net, staying close to the net, having the center being the guy that checks off. Again, there's a lot more to unpack, but that's and again, it's. But the one thing I definitely agree on is just as far as systematically. Taking as much, black and white out of it, right? There has to be a concept that the players are able to read. So,
Dom, just related to man on man in the D zone, and Tim, before you speak, I think Vancouver might have been the first NHL team to play man on man in the D zone, and I remember players would come off the ice after being scored on with that coverage, and it was their excuse. I had my man. And that was one of the first things I heard complaints from coaches is players, okay, I got my man. As long as I got my man, we're good. But boy, there's times you switch, you have to switch. And I think that's where the game has evolved to what you're talking about, Dominic. And the trading off in Boston or whatever. Okay, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, thanks, Willie. Yeah, it's been a long time debate. Man on man. I've always been sort of what they call in basketball a matchup zone defense, where it's sort of half man on man, half zone. But sort of to your point, Dom, because there's pluses and minuses. Yeah, why would you want Johnny Gaudreau down low defending in the D zone, but also if Johnny Gaudreau's got the puck in the offensive zone and he's going up the wall with a D on him, why would you want to give Johnny Gaudreau extra time and space by trying to do that handoff thing? And your point's well taken. Like Cassidy is an old school guy who played in Chicago back in the old days. They were a man-on-man down low team, as Detroit was back when I was playing. There's pluses and minuses to both. Vegas, when Gallant was there, again, old time Detroit guy, they were very much man on man. And, since DeBoer's been there, they've switched up a little bit. I think there are two sort of salient points for me. number one, with the 5-player offense that's so prevalent now in the NHL, and maybe more so at all levels of hockey, I think hockey is kind of changing. And if you're going to be content to play a packet in zone, you also have to be content to maybe be stuck in your own zone for long stretches of time, because teams are going to be able to possess the puck a lot more. I've always, and Wally and I have debated this for years and years. I've always been a guy who's taken the perspective as a defenseman. If I'm covering Dom Pittus, who's a really skilled guy, going up the wall in my own zone, if I'm covering Dom and he gets to the hash marks, why would I want to just drop off and leave him and give him time and space? One of the truisms in the NHL is when you're playing against skilled players, you want to pressure them as quickly as you can to limit their time and space, because it's your best chance for them to not be able to pick you apart, so to speak. Lots of them will still make a good play. The skilled players, time and space, they're always going to find a good play. And if you pressure them, they might, but they might not. And they might be forced into a cycle or a bad pass. So for me, it's a hybrid. Again, it's not always this, always that. Two things for me. When the puck goes to the point, low to high, that means everybody's got to find somebody. The D down low, the forward down low, you got to find a stick, a body around the net to deny tips and deflections and rebounds. The guys and the women on the point, you got to pressure high at the point. And Kevin Bieksa made the same point when he's talking maybe a month ago on that low to high pass. If a D starts to walk the line, that initiates a man-on-man coverage. So there's lots of different ways to go at it. It's kind of a pick your poison thing as a coach. But definitely Boston is a handoff at the hash mark team. I was watching them this week, actually. It's kind of funny. You made a bunch of notes in the first 2 periods of the first game, how differently they play in their own zone, the Islanders in Boston. It's almost diametrically opposed. But anyway, it's a pick your poison type of thing. I think you were next, Wally, and then Tom, but whatever.
Yeah. I just wanted to talk about this related to the female curriculum. Rick, I shared the evaluation for development document yesterday. But Tim, we cover that in the curriculum in the branches. Ultimately, it's man on man when it should be and zone when it should be. And that, to me, is what you said to begin with, in borrowing it from basketball. But teaching and talking to Al about this, in minor hockey, you want to get the picture so you can learn to read and react and position. Dom mentioned F1 and angling a bit. Well, if he's angling and steering, F2 knows where to go. Ultimately, that's part of the idea of reading the play and recognizing where to go. And it's not fixed. It's going to be a 2-1-2 when it evolves, and you've got to be able to do that on the forecheck. And you might switch sometimes at the half boards. And for me, it was a policy because of big European ice being too big, too much space for skilled players, to not have the defense and run around in big ice. But I think the players in the end have to figure it out. And if you give them a picture, allow that flexibility and ask questions, I think they really will in time. So Tom, go ahead.
Well, going back to the torpedo, I use 2 different styles. I use the torpedo against a team that's, definitely better than my team, because it keeps people in front of the puck, but it also has pressure on the puck all the time. And also it's a great way to play with a lead. And then I'll use the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I'm pretty even with the other team and this kind of stuff to create tempo. But as far as staying with the guy or dropping him, I think you have to stay with the guy till the play's over. And then that, 30% of the game when the puck is loose, that's when you can do your switches and this kind of thing. But if Dominic's got the puck, I better not drop him and hope somebody else picks him up. So I don't think it's good to drop a guy just with the rule about the top of the circles and this kind of stuff. And as Dom says, like Boston can do that because of their personnel. But the torpedo's great, and it's really great on wide ice. When I was with the Red Bulls and Pierre Pagé was the head coach, we basically used the torpedo and the pressure down the side all the time, and the left side halfback was really active, coming back door, this kind of thing all the time. And when the puck was up for grabs, he'd pull back, and the lefty was always mirroring the puck. And it's a great way to create pressure. So, I used the torpedo exclusively at Mount Royal. We were in the finals 4 of my 5 years there, coaching the women. So, I like both. It depends on. It's also hard to sell a torpedo. Sometime some D's or forwards think they're being demoted if they're the left winger. And I know what Scotty Bowman used with left wing lock, which is almost the same thing. And then nobody wanted to play left wing, and he went to the left side lock. So the third guy could be on the left side. So there's all kinds of options to do with it. But, you do have the balanced attack with a torpedo on each side. You always have pressure, and a wide rim or a wide pass won't just beat it immediately. So it's a good balanced way to play.
Go ahead, Dom.
Yeah, the one thing I wanted to add on the D zone, so the importance of second quick and closing it quick. Like I know that was a focus on us as well. So, you go back for pucks, like we want to try to shut it down in the first, 5, obviously as quick as you can, but we just kind of said 5 to 10 seconds, like 1 and 2 are in quick. And I know that changed. And again, that comes to personnel as well. The one year we were playing it and we had, subpar D and center group, and we ended up chasing around our whole zone because we couldn't initially kill the play. And then, the next year we had a stronger D, a stronger center, and then it was, it was obviously able to kill plays quicker, and then, having the 5 connected to be able to break out. So that's just one thing that I hadn't mentioned as being critically important to be able to close quick and have that second, the second quick we call it. So whether there's, pressure or, quick support in there. So just something to add there.
Thanks, Dom. And following up right on that, like the whole second quick thing. I mean, the D zone swarm is pretty prevalent with all the teams still playing now, where they'll 3-on-2 down low. The second quick comes in. You can afford to get that second person in quick. Maybe not on a D side trying to look for the puck, because you've got your third person helping out as well. Happens a ton with all the teams still in the playoffs now. But there's a time and the place again for that. It's got to be a little bit of a sort of 1-on-1 or 2-on-2 battle for it to happen. And I was just going to go back to, and again, Wally and I have debated this for years, but on the one hand, it's fine to say, because I agree, when you say it's man on man when it should be, and zone when it should be, it's fine to say that, and it's also fine to say it's up to the players to figure it out, FIO. But I really believe it's our job as coaches to help the players figure it out. You don't just leave it all to the players. So that's what the guidelines are about. Like, somebody's going up the wall in your D zone. For me, the rule is if you got a stick on them, you stay on them. Don't give them time and space. If there's a separation there, then it's going to become more of a build a wall with the board point forward, yourself, and maybe the low forward. Build a wall, keep the puck on the outside. But So those are the things we're getting to as coaches is you can't just say figure it out, and you can't just say, well, it's man on man when it should be and zone when it should be, because the players don't know when that is. You have to help them figure it out by asking questions, evaluating their decision making with them. So I think that's a real salient point. And last thing, I guess, all of this comes into whether it's the torpedo or the D zone. I still really come back to Bill Beany and his PSB: puck, support, balance. You want your first person on the puck. You want 2 and 3 supporting the puck, fairly close. You want 4 and 5 providing balance, like ice geography balance, and he does that offensively, PSB. He does it defensively, PSB. Get on the puck hard, get close to the puck, support. 4 and 5, you got to balance. So there's lots of, it's similar in lots of ways to, if you want to call it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and figuring it out. And I don't know, I think, is that, Doug, is that you on now with your hand up? And your mic is off if it is. And welcome if it is you. And no response there. I just saw somebody in the, anyway. Any other thoughts? Anybody on anything?
I'd love to push back on a couple of points.
Sure. It's not pushing back, Rick. It's just discussing.
I know, and I love it. I enjoy this so much. A former NHL coach once told me that there's no league in the world where there's a bigger gap in talent from the top player to the bottom player than the NHL. So, we've talked quite a bit. Dom, you talk a lot about the NHL and kind of playing man on man, but I think that if we extrapolate that down to other levels, I think that there's a lot of application. But I say that one of the things that I love sharing with my players, because it's an easy video thing, is I'll grab all of the goals from a Saturday night and I'll do a whole video on what teams did well to score goals. And then I'll take the same goals and I turn it around and say, this is the mistakes that the defensive team made. And I am just shocked in the NHL how many times goals are scored or great scoring chances are had because a defensive player is standing 5 feet away from a player in front of the net instead of taking their hands away for scoring. So my point being is that so many defenders aren't thinking about the man in their zone or the man that they're supposed to be covered in a zone defense or another defensive system, and instead, should be just picking people up. So, I think that you talk about how a good offensive player would enjoy playing one-on-one against a defender because you make a move, you get a chance, and you're off. I will say 2 things about that because the biggest pushback I get about playing man on man is, my guys on my 4th line aren't good enough to play man on man because they don't skate well enough or whatever. They won't be able to take a good player. But I will say that if you're taking if you're defending man on man in the zone, you're actually defending 2 men on the offensive player because you've got a goalie too. And I think that, if you think about playing in a small area, one-on-one, one offensive player, one defensive player, it's pretty tough for that offensive player to beat the one defensive player and a goalie to score a goal if you're in a small area game. But all of a sudden you add 5 men offense and 5 men defense. Now it becomes really tough for the defenders because they're not organized to take away good offensive players. And I think that if you give everybody the mentality that they have to make sure that the man that they take when they enter the zone can't score a goal, it changes the focus on their play to, I got to get the puck back, to I'm gonna bide my time, make sure my man doesn't score, but we will get the puck back because we're all doing the same thing. And so I think that becomes the same thing on the forecheck, just to move that the other way. We started with some comments about teaching reading and teaching, having players angle because it makes it easier for F2 and F3 to get the pucks back. And I think that we make this mistake that we're telling our players to read too late. So, you kind of, F2 might be flying into the middle of the ice, down the middle, going, okay, I got to figure out where the puck's going. And then once they make that read and they determine that it's going to go either to the boards or the other side or wherever it's going, now they're a step or two behind. And I tell you, there was guys in blue jerseys last week that were doing exactly this, looking for where the pass was going from the Montreal D, and they just get beat. What I try to tell my players in our man-on-man forecheck is that F2 is going right to the far defenseman, wherever he might be, even if he's in front of the net. We're going to take that pass away right away. The other forward's going to go right to the boards, right to that man on the boards that's available for a pass, and take that guy away. Now, once you start in those directions, obviously, if something happens with the puck, it goes somewhere else, you're going to have to make a read as to whether you can pick it up. Maybe you're jumping right into an offensive opportunity. There's lots of things that might happen. But I think that if you give a focus that man somewhere in the zone, even if it's the defenseman picking up, looking for wingers, like I'm responsible for that winger on the weak side. I'm responsible for the centerman that's kind of trying to curl through the middle for a pass. If we can just take all of those passes away, I think then we can read from that, just as we read from man-on-man in the zone when there's a turnover. But I think we got a better shot at getting the puck back. And, someone once said to me, the best man-on-man defense looks like 5 dance partners out in the dance floor, right? That who everybody's got, and you're picking up all your men. And that's what I've always kind of tried to go for. The other little thing that I just thought about, too, on the, taking all the men away, even if you've got a Johnny Hockey with the puck and one man's covering him, there's a great basketball idiom that, let Michael Jordan score as many as he wants, but make sure that none of his teammates get a basket. Take that to hockey. Let Goudreau get a couple good chances to score, but if we can make sure all his line mates aren't going to score, then we might be able to win the game and get the puck back a little bit more often. So, and I just have one quick figure it out story. I think, there's a lot of figuring it out that we allow our players to do when we're playing man on man. And I think it's a great teaching model for a lot of things we do. But I was on the ice with Tim with the under 22 women back in 2011. And I remember Tim was teaching just some puck movement at the blue line with Laura Fortino, and she was having some trouble with it. And I went over to Tim. I said, Tim, tell her to do this, because it was obvious what she was doing wrong. And Tim said, no. He says, let her figure it out, because then she'll remember it better. And anyway, I think the figure it out idiom is terrific as well. So that's my little pushback on some of those comments.
Not pushback, discussion, Rick.
Yeah, sorry.
Just a couple of comments for me, like on and whoever the NHL coach said, no league is there a bigger separation between top and bottom. I would agree that might have been true 15 or 20 years ago. I definitely don't think it's true now. I think there's a way bigger skill difference at, say, midget AAA level between the best players and the bottom players, if you will, on the team. Like even the worst NHL players now skate well, handle puck well, shoot it well. They're not as skilled. They're not as high hockey sense, of course. And in the skill department, they're way below the best players, of course. But I don't think that's as true now as it was maybe 15, 20 years ago or 30 years ago when you had, really the bottom 3 to 4 or 5 forwards were mucker grinders, maybe fighters, who, were not really nearly as good as the depth players today in terms of their game. And in terms of your two reactions to your statement, Rick, about shocked how many goals are scored when there's 5 feet of separation between the defender and the offensive player. And I would agree. Like, my shock in this playoff in particular is there have been so many examples. And again, when the puck goes to the point, I'm shocked at how little emphasis there is on the emphasis I would put on our low players. When that puck goes to the point, find a stick down low. Do not let a tip happen. Do not let a rebound happen. Box out if you can early, great, but that's not the priority. The priority is do not let a tip happen. Do not let a rebound happen. I'm shocked at the whole fronting mentality of the NHL and how many goals are scored on free tips by the offensive players. There's a gazillion examples in the playoffs this year. And the last point to throw into the mix, it's interesting. Like when you say, Rick, it's really hard for a one-on-one player to beat somebody one-on-one and score a goal. But the interesting part of that statement is that's what a lot of NHL teams want offensively now. Like they're talking about the stay away thing, and you can watch Tampa very consciously in some situations. If they've got a one-on-one in the corner, they're staying away. They're letting that one-on-one happen because they know that eventually the defensive focus will stray from the man-to-man, and most of the NHL guys are capable of protecting the puck and keeping the puck and then finding a good place to put it. So it's kind of like the flip thing. If the offense wants that one-on-one, back to Dom's point, if the offense wants that one-on-one, why would we want to allow that defensively? So it's just an interesting balance, push and pull for me as a coach to think about, well, if the offense wants this, shouldn't we defensively be trying to take that away? And on the flip side, and very similarly, I've always wondered for years why there wasn't more emphasis on middle entries. We always used to talk about speed wide with the puck, triangulate in the old days, triple drive now. As a defenseman, that's what I want. I don't want you coming to the middle of the rink because it's way tougher for me and my partner to figure out how to defend that. So why isn't there more emphasis now? You're starting to see it. And Tom will be quick to point out they have a big emphasis on that in Finland. If you can, on the attack, get to the middle because it's harder to defend instead of staying on the outside. So I used to always laugh at that as a defender. They always wanted speed down the wall. I'm like, perfect. That's exactly where I want you, on the outside the dots. I have more sort of ability to control that than I do if the puck's coming through the middle. So a lot to unpack there, but just some things to think about for everybody. And I think Wally was next, I believe. Is your mic off, Wally? I'm checking.
Rick, you had mentioned the story of Tim and Laura Fortino and letting her figure it out. Al, I put in the chat a link. It's only 30 seconds. I was in Medicine Hat at a U8 game back in the day, mentoring coaches. And we had been there, Tim, for the initial mentorship early in the season, doing the Coach One type presentation and observing practice. They weren't playing games yet. Then we came in, I think it was near Christmas, and watched him play a game. And I went on the bench. His team was forechecking like unbelievable. And I said, what the heck are you doing? They looked like they knew what they were doing and where they were going. They were organized. It was like, so he sent me the video of it. I shared the 39-second video there's actually an 8-minute video that to me is a little bit too much information, good for coaches. But I shared the link on the chat of this coach. He shared it on YouTube of, I call it Figure It Out, but it's train tracks. So if you're in the right, puck's in the right corner and you're forechecking, your left winger and left D don't cross the train tracks. They spread out. That's how you have a shape that they can play within. Now I use center, right winger, left winger, but you can use 1, 2, 3, and the D will be the D. But that concept at the U11 whole ice level, Al, that you're moving to, they just won't figure it out without that little nudge of a picture to play within. And I think you'll be amazed at how it'll transpire into everything you guys have said at every level. You know, pressure, support, balance. Your 3 Ps, Dom. That picture for those kids that age is all they need to do those simple cue words. And I think they will figure it out. So that's my point on it. Okay.
Yeah, Wally, I might just add there for clarity in case somebody doesn't understand what you mean by the train tracks. And correct me if I'm wrong, Wally, but you know, Wally, in you dealing with especially a lot of really, really young teams, sort of draw a line on the rink board from post to post and from post to post from one end to the other. And that's kind of the train tracks down the middle of the ice. I think that's what you mean by that, right, Wally?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Yeah, just for clarity. Sure.
Yeah, because in whole ice hockey, when we watch them play, they swarm. You can put a blanket over all 5 players. They never played whole ice hockey.
All 10.
all 10. So it's a way of getting that structure of a claw on the forecheck as you hold your hand up, 1, 2, 2, the beginning shape. But it could be a 2, 1, 2. Who's going to be first, second, third? Figure it out. Coaches just need to have a little freedom at the beginning level of a structure to figure it out and ask them questions about what they're thinking, and they'll figure it out a little better. Like when I watch these NHL goals that are scored, and you look at the puck move behind the net, and I think there was a goal scored last night behind the net, bang, just right out front. Guy had inside position, quick in. It's happening so fast there. I just can't imagine how quick they have to think to execute defensively and offensively. And man on man, I believe at that level is a pretty important thing to have. The closer you are to your net, I believe, is low zone offense. You've got to really be aware. So good points, everyone.
I think one of the sort of valid points to make too is, Peter Smith he likes to avoid the word structure. He likes the word organize. But whether we're talking about a forecheck, going back to Dom's point, if F1 is going as hard as he or she can go at the puck carrier with their stick on the ice, it's pretty helpful if F2 and F3 think, okay, F1's got really good pressure. If it comes to it, we know that F1 will cheat to the inside and steer the puck up the wall, or will cheat to the outside and force the puck across the ice. It's really, really helpful for F2 and F3 to make quicker reads if there's that organization to the forecheck, instead of just making it like a complete read. And to Rick's point, maybe having F2 and F3 having to wait too long to anticipate. I think it's helpful to have that little bit of organization, whether it's offensively or defensively. Yeah. Go ahead, Wally.
Just from a learning point of view, the when you change, that's when you do have a definite first, second, third coming out of the box. If it's a dump and change, a wholesale change, and that's where, to me, the steering and reading is imperative. Now, Dom, I'm going to ask you this question. I watch the NHL and I highlight every game the fundamental skill a defenseman has to have on a breakout. Anybody, what is that? And it's the first thing you teach your D in terms of tactical skating and tactical breakout passing. Anybody? Well, just watch the games and see how many times they fake inside and turn to the outside. That's your breakout. You're attracting that checker with pressure. He's biting. He might be on you. And you're doing a quick, tight turn to the inside. Boy, that's the first skill to teach and acquire with kids. Fundamentally, repeatedly. And during a game, they'll know the time to do it. But quick, the deceptive, evasive, tight turn, it's got so much value to execution within the framework of a structure. And those are the things you do, is you work on those little skills. And I know Dom's specialty is working on all those little skills within the game. And that's where the NHL has gone beyond. And Darryl Belfry in particular has gone beyond in terms of the thinking of space and getting to space and creating space, whether it's anticipation, with the puck, without the puck. It's amazing, amazing stuff.
Go ahead, Bob.
Well, just Wally's point there about the evasive tight turn. I think that's where your torpedo breaks down. If you're going straight at a defenseman and you've taken away his passing options, what's he going to do? He's just going to tight turn and skate the puck. And the way these guys skate the puck nowadays, they're going to be gone. Like, I think you have to set an angle, an early angle, so that the forecheckers behind you can get a good read quickly. So you want to cut the ice in half, one way or the other, whether you want him, depending on which way you're coming at him, you either want to make sure he's going to turn up the wall or make sure he goes behind the net. And that allows your F2 and F3 to make an early read and take away the passes, and you still have your pressure on the puck carrier. If we're just going to take away passing options, the defenseman's just going to carry the puck. And I think the skill level of the players is so high now, trying to play one-on-one all over the ice, they're just going to leave you in your dust. It's just going to be chase hockey. I'm having a hard time buying it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I was just going to touch on Wally's point. Wally, I totally agree that teaching the defense, it's not fake inside and go outside. It's teaching the defense the deception to either fake inside, go outside, or fake outside and go inside towards the net. So it's not always inside out. It's the deception that I'm going this way. Nope, I'm going that way. Or I'm going this way. Nope, I'm going that way. And again, I talked about this before. Reed Cashman has a great developing deception in your defenseman presentation on the hockey coach's site. Highly recommend it. Really terrific sort of 1 hour presentation with some good, really good practice video of him teaching his defensemen to quickly turn their toes this way, then go that way, or quickly turn their toes this way, then go that way. Use their stick as a wand to fake this way, go the other way. Really good 1 hour presentation. He'll be a hell of a college coach, I think, and Dartmouth is lucky to have him. So I think that I totally agree, Wally. The deception is primary. And then I guess you would add, the deception is no good if you can't make a first pass. So you got to be able to make that first pass on the tape. So
yeah,
they're deadly and extremely valuable.
Yeah. I'm really deliberate teaching this. So I'm talking Al Ramsey moving into Adam and Pee Wee, and fundamentally this fake inside, go outside, and I totally understand where you're coming from. I'm just talking when you do fake and turn and go outside, now the middle is going to be more open. You got to keep your feet. There's all kinds of sub skills that have to be taught there. Now, related to it's not the torpedo, but I sort of look at torpedo as being 2 on. And I see a lot of open space there. Shannon Miller phoned me coaching at a World Championships after Nagano. And live from, I think it was played in Sweden. And she said, Wally, what do you do against the 2-1-2 forecheck? And well, I look at numbers. Corners are available. Just corner reverse. Make them come to you. Reverse it in the corner. And to me, it's that simple. It's I call it geometry and math. It's space. What's more space is available? How do you create more space with the puck, which you have in transition on breakout? And it's those concepts of understanding within a framework that I think precede the execution. And I think that's what we're getting at here is how to deliver on doing everything everybody's talking about. Rick?
No, I think
And
that's,
Dom's got his hand up too. Go ahead, Rick. Or Dom?
yeah, Dom, go ahead. I think your mic's off, Don.
Yeah, mic's off.
There you
Sorry, guys. I was going to share a document just based on kind of our, because we we bantered this about back, system giving too much information and that, and I'll share it with you. And so basically, as a staff, we decided that we were going to give these to and I'll give you the breakout one. We were going to share these 3 points, and it gets pretty in depth, but we just found that our verbiage and our communication needed to simplify, and everything that we're talking about. And I thought it was interesting. And here I'll share it right now, just based on the breakout here. And again, just talking about conceptually, and you're talking about the D, like Loutsey talking about the D, and the first thing that they want to do is to to wheel, they're going to wheel. And so I thought it was interesting. And again, as we were talking about this, I thought this is something that, maybe not review now, but maybe something we can talk about at a later date. But again, it just basically, in the red were the things that we were talking about, where it's, you're going back for the puck, and it's just not up to the defense, like the forework for the one. And we've taken that from Cruyff. I know that he would always talk about that on the soccer side of things, and then, we obviously wanted to play quick. So the wheel mentality, moving, create, options, and then, find the middle, because as we talk about, a lot of times they're taking the strong side board away and the middle option is open. So again, and there's subcategories here within, everything. But I thought, my head coach in Stockton here is Cale McLean, super progressive guy, extremely intelligent, and he does a good job of simplifying. So I thought there'd be something to share here.
Dom, were you trying to screen share a document there, or are you trying to just send it in the chat? Oh, your mic's off.
I sent it in the chat. Have you not got it?
I didn't see it.
It says breakouts. It's 36 kilobytes.
I did not get it.
Oh,
anyway, I was just going to go back.
There it is.
I was kind of going to go back to, because I really think it's important. Go back to the idea, the idea that you fake inside and go outside and the middle is open is not going to be true against a really good 1-2-2 lock the middle forechecking team. If they have the mentality, they want to turn you up the ice, cut off the middle, turn you up the ice. They're going to have F2 sitting on the board side wing. They're going to have F3 sitting right on top of your middle outlet. The middle won't necessarily be open. So I still go back to, even for Al, I think he had to leave the call, but even for youth coaches, it's incredibly important to be able to teach your players to turn this way, turn that way, and be able to fake inside, go outside, fake outside, go inside, because then you're less predictable and you can deal with all of the situations that come up. So you can do deliberate work at the very youngest levels, faking inside for the D and then going outside. But I still think it's equally important to teach them to fake outside and go inside, whether it's to gain the net or even to turn up the middle of the ice. So I just think that's really, really important. Go ahead, Kim. Welcome back. Sitting listening to all the long-winded old farts for just.
I'm sitting here listening to all of you. I just have the camera off because my kids are milling about in the background. I think your point's a good one about fake low, drive high, or vice versa. It's actually something I teach at every single hockey camp I have ever done in probably the last 10 years for forwards and Ds. And it's like instant gold in youth girls hockey, right? Because the puck we've talked about before gets sucked to the wall. So if you can, fake one way and drive out the other way, and I've seen Reed's presentation, good Dartmouth guy now. But it's a fundamental skill, and I think we would be remiss if we didn't say how fundamental it is on the offensive side of the puck. When you're in the offensive zone, in terms of even the neutral zone, it's not just for the Ds. And I know Rick and we've talked about the torpedo, and I played against it when I was at Dartmouth, and Digit used it at Brown. So I'm very familiar with it, and I think in female hockey, especially at the younger levels, someone mentioned the 1-2-2. If you've watched any minor girls hockey in the last however many years, it's all 2-1-2 full pressure forecheck most of the time. And in my experience, you don't really encounter the 1-2-2 until you get to the junior level and then occasionally the midget level. And I always think of the forecheck less of where do I stand, but what do I want to do once we get the puck? So more of a transitional system, right? You're not forechecking for the sake of forechecking, you're forechecking to go on offense. So for me, the 2-1-2 often, and in girls hockey, again, that pinch down the wall is everywhere. I always challenge coaches to say, you have the puck now, but now I can, draw a small circle around 6 players, arguably. What are you going to do? And are your players talented enough to come out of a scrum of 3-on-3 in a very small area and actually make a play? I would argue, no, they aren't, right? So, the 1-2-2, of course, yeah, they're going to go east-west on you, and then you just surf over or, go into a bit of a hybrid. But I find in the female game, it's all pressure all the time. I always say, you've never seen a controlled breakout in women's hockey. You did see them in the PWHPA, and I think, the point about skating into the pressure and then escaping out of it, in the clips I posted, you saw some great examples of Bourbonnais and Thompson, who are both centralized, doing that, coming into the pressure where it was coming from. I think and then spinning off of it. And, those clips are things I want to emphasize because in lower age group female hockey, most Ds just panic and throw it away, even under minimal pressure. So, to Wally's points, I'm always thinking about how I can teach it to younger kids at my camps and on the teams. But I like the train tracks, Wally. That's a great idea. Something I'll look at implementing at the U9 level here.
I think that the teaching side, Kim and Tim, you've got to be able to fake both ways and go both ways, and the game will dictate that. I'm just sort of being theoretical here at the beginning stages and walking them through. It all ties in. I think the biggest thing, Al, with kids, and I don't know if Al Ramsey's still on or not, but
No, he had to leave, Wally.
yeah. Well, at those levels, the biggest problem observing them is they'll tight turn and stop. They won't accelerate out of that turn and skate with their head up. And pass while skating is the one thing. If you do execute that turn, get moving, you have momentum. And those are things you have to teach at a young age. At the watching the NHL, they do them. They're just doing things unbelievably well. And I think, Kim, I've talked to many, female coaches over the years that don't watch the NHL hockey. And I think you've got to watch it. If you're coaching women, you've got highlights of women, but you're going to see things that women aren't doing yet. They're doing stuff they've never done before more often, but the NHL is raising the bar of different things being done. So it's all about learning from each other and learning from the best when you watch the game and learning from watching the game. That's what we're trying to do.
One of the things that Cashman really emphasizes, and it makes intuitive sense of it, we're always looking for languaging. Like he calls it puck on the hip. So when you make that tight turn, you're in a passing position immediately, so you can move it immediately. And they put a lot of emphasis on that. It's not really puck on the hip as much as it is your sort of well, anyway, that's the language he uses, just to be in a passing position. When you come out, you're coming out of that tight turn, or as you're making that tight turn, so you can move the puck immediately if you want to or need to. And for sure, feet moving is an emphasis as well.
I got a question for Dominic here. For all of you, back in the Howie Meekers days, every tight turn was wrist across. So the puck wasn't on the hip, but you could sure turn tight. So, of course, I was reared in that era of coaching, teaching at hockey school. And the idea of puck on the hip, it's like your hand on your hip and you come out open with the puck. You're in a triple threat position better. But I find stick length makes it really difficult. The puck on the hand on the hip, you can do a tighter turn with a longer stick. But that's one of the things I've had to grow through, is get away from wrist across on all tight turns, because that's what I was conditioned with. So I believe, Dom, at your level, everybody's got their puck on the hip, hand on the hip, come out in a triple threat. Is that true?
Yeah, you'd be surprised though. I'd work with some D1 players here in California, and they play guys at Denver, and there's a guy at Mankato, and having them do wall work, and if you're on their forehand and they've got to cut back close to the boards, they'll tend to get themselves crossed up. So it's not as as universal as you might think. Although I do agree, like. You put yourself in a pretty vulnerable position. If you were to get hit with your arms crossed, you're gonna hurt yourself. But yeah, no, it's I think the one thing that I work with a lot of guys is just on puck placement. Because obviously we've talked about F1 and how hard they come in. Being able to put the puck as a D, being able to put it, whether it's for your partner or whether it's for yourself. I find players struggle with that, or at our level, especially the European players, the European defensemen. We had a Swedish defenseman that came over. The breakouts are different for the D in North America than they are in Sweden, and in Sweden they can skate themselves out of trouble a lot of the times. In North America, as we know, they're coming a lot harder, and so you've got to, the skilled D and you can see it, whether it's Morrissey or whether it's, some of these smaller guys, they do a good job at recognizing where that pressure is coming from and potentially putting it into a space where they can potentially get it back, where they don't have to hang on to it per se, but it's still within a small proximity where they can regain possession.
I would follow up on that, because I agree, Dom, that it's not. It's very advantageous if you have the space from the checker to come out of that tight turn in a triple threat position, puck on hip. But it's not an absolute thing. You have to learn both. And I think the puck on the hip is probably something you have to teach and for young players to learn. It's maybe more natural to turn the hands over. But in tight space, one-on-one, wrist across tight turn, you can tight turn in smaller space. You can protect the puck better with a wrist across, closer to your body, tight turn. So again, for me, it's situational. It's not an absolute thing. And I really get frustrated with players who said, well, my coach told me I should always tight turn this way, puck on hip. Or my coach told me I should always do wrist across, tight turn. No, you got to learn both. It's situation. You got to use them when they're applicable, because they both present advantages in different situations. Go ahead. I think Wally, go ahead.
I was just sort of on this train of thought. I've forgotten what I was going to say. So Dom, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, the only thing I'll say there is, and I mentioned it, it's tough in small area if you get your hands crossed and then you get hit like a lot of guys, like guys that end up not being able to protect themselves a lot of times, especially the D on the wall as they're coming. I agree with you. It's easier to turn tight, but as quickly as guys are coming in and as close as they are, I've started to do a little bit more in puck placement as opposed to, as I say, keeping it tight, like especially on their forehand. If they're turning to your right, the board's on your right side and you've got to turn back to the wall. You want that to be an option, but more of just a spot to an area, and then be able to whatever kind of jam step or stern or whatever you want to call it, to get back the other way. And as I say, but no, I agree with you. I agree with Tim. It's quicker to get around there. I just putting the guy in a little bit of a vulnerable position.
Dom, are you talking about passing to yourself?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Now, Kim, that's one of the things that terminology, pass to yourself, relating it to what we're talking about, it was new to me. And that terminology, in terms of putting it to a space you're going to go to and you're not going to be vulnerable, keeping it. And I see a lot of that passing to yourself on direct attack one-on-one. We used to say fake one way, go the other, wide lateral move and protect the puck. But boy, they're flipping the puck to space and they're going and getting it. It's quite intriguing.
I'd say as well, Wally, so that's on the D side, but like this whole PEP slipping the puck, and now listen, I don't agree with that, but I know I coach our forwards. Like if you have it on your stick, you're doing, and I want to, like, you think of Michael Backlund driving wide, slipping it underneath into space. Like we'll do that in all different areas and all different scenarios and different angles, in the offensive zone and even through the neutral zone, because I find that, the days of, and there's some guys that can do it. I was never able to do it, but be able to toe drag around somebody, as opposed to, putting it in an area and then beating them to that spot. And again, it takes touch, it takes, reading and drawing the defender's stick in. And, I don't know if it was on this call that I talked about as, passive pressure as a coach and being able to go stick the puck and them recognizing the cues to be able to slip those pucks into spaces. But like you think of like Quinn Hughes, and the reason I bring him up is the coach, one of the coaches on our staff worked with him at the National Development Program and said that like he was elite at it. And so I watched him, and Kucherov and these guys that are slight, they're able to, and Datsuk was really good back in the day as well. Obviously he had more of a skill set, but to be able to, like, that little pass to yourself into the triangle and to, and again, there's a lot of reading that goes on. Like what's the angle of the D and everything else. And obviously once you slipped it is to get, in the hip pocket to get inside, those are all factors. But I think that is, from an offensive tactic, one that, I find the younger players have a better and better understanding of it. Obviously, the skill coaches have been working with them from that side of things, but it's an important skill, because hanging on to it, like everybody stick on puck, and so and almost blindly so, and so they come in with it. So to be able to slip it into an area, and then even to knock the stick away or be able to get, use your speed advantage to be able to manage that. I mean, the guy in Edmonton is probably the best in the world, but he's another level, and if you want to compare to him. But I think a lot of the players are starting to build this skill set into their repertoire.
Yeah, I totally agree, Dom, and I was just gonna add, but you mentioned it. I think that's the term Daryl Belfer uses all the time too. That slip pass is the kind of common terminology for that. Really, really prevalent in the game, and terrific skill to sort of learn for all players of all ages. Like just another way to sort of attack a one-on-one. Welcome back, Al.
Daryl, he responded. I don't know if any of you are following the email exchanges, but I just forget which clip I talked about, but it led to an unbelievable, it was a McKinnon highlight. And I did it to, McKinnon got the right start years ago. His skating, his edge control, that's what I called it, posted it for, because I'm the guy who says, give kids the right start, teach them how to skate, master their edges with a proper stick length. And Rick, as I told you, I said, we talked about some of the players in the national team who would have stayed for a few Olympics had they had a better right start. Well, McKinnon had a great start. And Daryl's point was, and I don't quite understand what he was saying, but it was skating to a position so he could receive the puck going fast. And the idea of using his linear crossovers to accelerate was mentioned, but did anybody read Daryl's responses and have any interpretations of it? Help me out on that, because I understand what he's doing. It was almost like, for me, he was thinking too much, but it's not thinking too much. It's me not understanding. So, Tim, did you read what Daryl had to say?
I read one response for Daryl, but that doesn't ring a bell. I thought it was on something else, but I'll try to do a quick Gmail search here. I remember him responding at length about something. I'm not sure if that was it. I'll try to find it if I can.
You know, Doug Shepard didn't come on, but Doug worked. He's the guy that's scouting. Now he's in Massachusetts. Al knows Doug. And Doug was, I think, teaching at a prep school, or he was running a skill development program. He was a certified scout, and he's now left because of the frustration with the system, Al. The number of kids that left the school where they were progressing really well with good coaching, but they're looking for greener pastures, somebody who's going to give them more ice time and guarantee them a future. And so he's given up on his hope, and he's full-time scouting, but he responded to that. And basically, he understood where I was coming from and where Al Andrews was coming from. It had nothing to do about the thinking of where to go. It was about, how do you skate like that with speed? And when you get it, maintain or increase that speed to that degree. How do you skate the game so well? Controlling the puck, mastering your edges, and the fundamentals of that is all I was getting to. Nothing more than that. Now here we're talking slip passing and wrist across and elbow up. Those are important things. But boy, what precedes that is that little right start. That was my whole point of it. So, Al, I think you might have left, but I shared a link on Train Tracks teaching forecheck for whole ice hockey.
Yeah, I saw that, Wally.
Yeah, it's a 39-second one, but when you open it, you can see the guy's 8-minute one where he gives all the details. And I'm sure one of the guys would just let him get the picture, and I know the details, and I may have some questions to get them to do it, but it's a great video for your organization if they're going to play whole ice, to get a picture, to play the game and play in a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fashion. So I'm glad I got an opportunity to bring that up, and it really connects to everything that we're talking about here today.
Yeah, I'll check that out, Wally. Thank you.
Okay.
Wally, I think I figured out, well, I don't know if I figured out exactly what Daryl's saying, but I think from watching the clip again, I figured out that he's talking about that when you see the pass made off the wall to McKinnon, the natural tendency for most players is to skate into that puck. What McKinnon does is he's skating north, and then as the pass is coming into space, he starts his slash, that's what I call it, diagonal skating. He starts slash skating before he even receives the puck. So he's already in his crossover acceleration before he receives it. Whereas
Right, yeah.
if you watch the clip again, the majority of players, I would guess Daryl is arguing, would accelerate into that puck and be going towards the left boards instead of accelerating into the space towards the right boards. So like if I'm trying to dissect between the email and the clip that I just rewatched, but yeah, I think he's trying to emphasize that skating on the diagonal and already moving at full speed prior to receiving the puck.
Kim, as weird as it may seem for a Dartmouth grad, I think you nailed it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, Tim. But it's an art, and it was interesting because having watched all the PWHPA games, and I posted that clip of Nurse cutting back inside the dots and taking her defender back outside, and that's one of the best examples of the linear crossover that I've seen in the female game. It might be the best example I've seen. It's a very sort of McDavid type of rush down the ice. And then, I look conversely at Turnbull, and I think she had a great tournament and was extremely effective. But she did a lot of the same end-to-end, and a lot of her end-to-end rushes, it was more the traditional linear skating. So I think that's I've been trying to teach sort of that slash skating, that diagonal to the female players for a long time because of what Daryl was saying, how it makes defending that much more challenging. At the same token, if you're attacking straight on, and I think this is another one that Daryl's talked about, when you attack someone straight on, similar to what Rick is saying about forechecking straight on, if you attack straight on, you do have the ability to go either way pretty easily. So, but I definitely, it's something that I don't know that there's a woman who can skate like McKinnon, but at least now that I've seen recently, but that idea of the slash skating and the accelerating into it, like, I don't know that there's many players other than people named McDavid or McKinnon who can do that.
Kim, not many guys can skate like McKinnon, so no disrespect to the females. But I have to say your Dartmouth colors are showing when you use as great a player as Sarah Nurse is, a user in the same breath as McDavid. I think she'd even blanch at that. But I accept the fact that it was a great linear crossover. Go ahead, Dom. Love to bash the big green, by the way, in case you hadn't noticed, you guys.
Yeah, no, I guess I, want to, just agree with Wally a little bit in regards to McKinnon having the foundation, and, also point out, I had the privilege of being at it was a camp in Vail, Colorado, with some of the best players in the game, and they did dry land, and they did like some sprints, and talking with their strength coach there that was running it, like McKinnon would have been like national level track athlete as well. So it's something to keep in mind. All that being said, all the more important to have those foundations of his edges to be able to transfer that power, right? Because we've all seen the kid that can run and has the explosiveness and those genetics, but hasn't had the proper foundation growing up. But yeah, he's generational. I think, especially as he gets older here.
Yeah, I think just before you start there, Al, your next. I totally agree, Dom, because Wally and I talked about this the other day. For sure, he got a great right start with Al with his skating fundamentals, but there's something genetic or biological going on there for sure, as there is with McDavid. And kind of like Johnny on the women's side, Rebecca Johnson, she's a terrific skater, a pure skater, but she was also a national level track athlete. Like she was on the bubble of being a junior national team, I think 200-meter sprinter. So there's some genetics going on there as well. But if you don't have the skating fundamentals, you're going to be missing some speed. So they go hand in hand for sure. Sorry to steal your time there, Al.
No, that's all right. I was actually going to kind of piggyback on that. I think with McKinnon, you see, where those three things come together. You see he has a beautiful stride. He was exceptionally well taught. I could watch him all day. I just think he's got such a beautiful skating stride. He understands how to use space and how to get defenders to turn. And then, Andy O'Brien, I was reading something that he wrote about him there, the sports science guy, and he was talking about the length of his levers, right? So his legs and stuff, and just the length of those and the speed, his limb speed and his power and explosiveness just being off the charts, right? So when all those three things come together, you get McKinnon, right? And
yeah, and Kim makes the good point. Kendall Coyne Schofield on the women's side again, kind of blessed, probably same way. A really nice, pure skating stride with some good genetics there for sure. And Wally and I was speculating with Wally the other day when I was watching McKinnon blow by the Vegas D there to score that goal. I kind of wondered to myself, it looks like, and it's really interesting, I'd really be interested to know, like comparing him to McDavid, for me, they're very different. It looks like to me, like McKinnon is stronger and more powerful. And I believe he has a longer blade, like more blade on the ice. McDavid is quicker and has the real fast twitch. And it looks to me like he has a more rockered blade, and he relies on the quickness less than the power and strength. Now they both have both, but it would be interesting for me to know what McKinnon's rocker is on his blade and how long it is, and what McDavid's is. Go ahead, Wally, because it gets the biomechanics too.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention mention the linear crossovers, and Dom was leaving it. The way McDavid was brought up, I don't know whether he was in track or multi-sport or not, but Power Edge Pro, Al, is the question I wanted to ask you about. I see it being beneficial for developing that power because of the plyometric effect of going over objects, crossing over and under the linear crossover, because in the repetition you're landing on different edges. Are you seeing an impact on that, running that program with your group?
100%. Yeah, 100%. Like the kids that are doing that and have been doing it now for the 2 years that we've been partners, I think it's just like the progress that they've made has been pretty incredible, especially for us not being, we're a town volunteer coach program, right? And some of the progress that they've made is wild. But I think one of the things you're talking about, McDavid being a multi-sport athlete, like you watch his, that movie there that Sportsnet did about his recovery and stuff. And they talk about him having an exceptional internal GPS, I think was one of the things that they said about him. And he's out there doing gymnastics as part of his recovery and jumping on trampolines. And, I think there's a lot of things that probably led to him having that exceptional agility. And I think that that's kind of the difference, right? McDavid seems to have more skating agility perhaps than McKinnon. McKinnon skates with more power, because that's his strength, and that's, kind of his God-given thing, right? So 2 ways you can be an incredible skater. And I think that those are 2 really good examples to kind of look at. 2 guys doing it differently, both being exceptional.
The other thing I wanted to mention, it's skating, and hockey sense personified as Josh Morrissey. I was really glad that Dom mentioned his name, but right now he may be one of the best first passers I've ever seen. And watching this Moritz Seider play with Team Germany, he is also an extremely good first passer. And it's a unique quality that that keeps people in the game. And Morrissey's overall skating and his puck control, positioning, it's pretty incredible. He's playing pretty well. I hope the series doesn't get too ugly for him to play his game. But
Yeah, I might with the current D playing here, like you might add Petrie and Montreal to that list. Like really good first pass guy. It's one of his real strengths. And I once, I think I've said this before too. I once heard a quote from Bobby Orr. I searched and searched for it. I can't find it again, but he basically said that's the number one quality for any defenseman is to be a good first passer. There's a great clip of Morrissey last night, Wally, doing what I call the sidewinder thing. He and his partner did an unbelievable. They did a little double D behind regroup. Where they went up and came back, and their partner went behind. Then that D went up and turned back, and the partner went behind again. And he comes out of it, carrying the puck up the ice, but facing the middle of the ice, like in a backwards mode, doing his, I call it the sidewinding thing. There's a great clip of him, like great skills. And then on the Rick Troggett side, it wasn't his best night, Josh. He's a tremendous defenseman, but definitely caught watching on the first goal against. A little guilty of puck goes to the point, totally forgetting about net front coverage. Both he and Lowry sort of staring at the puck instead of picking the guy. It was Kotkaniemi coming out of the corner. They both just had battle with him in the corner, and they both just totally left him for a wide open tap in 4x6. So all the great players make the bad plays occasionally as well. I think I was known to make one or two.
Yeah, just in terms of skill, Suzuki's goal last night, where he backhand toe dragged the puck, patiently waited to tuck it in on Hellerbuck, was a classic example of individual skill. I mean, it boggles my mind what they can do with the puck, and I get nervous with the risks they take. They're doing. I don't think there's a mindset of risk reward anymore. They just play and they'll take whatever risks they feel they can, and I don't think they're feeling any pressure that it's going to be addressed, and they're not feeling guilty about it. That makes the game interesting and at least going to maybe give up more scoring chances, but it's fun to watch.
Are you thinking that? I may have misunderstood. Are you thinking that was a risky play, Wally? Like I don't
Which
quite
one?
know. Suzuki.
Oh no, not at all. No, I'm just saying. Johnny Gaudreau is a great example of. He'll be toe dragging everywhere on breakout and toe dragging in the zone, and there's just a lot of players doing more great things offensively to create time and space, and that sometimes it's not chip it out up the boards. They'll make those quick short passes and they'll throw it rink wide on a breakout or at least a high breakout. And back in our day, you weren't allowed to make a rink wide pass in your zone, coming out of the zone. But I know it came to rink wide if you were moving with the puck as a defenseman. And I'm just saying, generally speaking, risk reward when you get to the green zones near the blue lines on either side of getting the puck out or getting it in, particularly entering the offensive zone. That's sort of the old school Cardinal zone of you better get it in safe and deep and not take risks.
Yeah, we talk. Yeah, I get you now. We talk a lot about time and space, obviously, and that's a good example of with the high degree of skill in the game now. It's about time and place, not time and space. It's time and place where you try to use those puck skills to maybe create something. So it's about time and place. And, that move by Suzuki, great move to score that 2-on-1 goal. They're the exact same move in the Tampa Carolina game the other night. I call it the Corey Perry sort of backhand toe drag. And I forget who did it in the Tampa game, but exactly the same thing on a 2-on-1. And it was Kaloran, actually. He had a 2-on-1 backhand toe drag to get to the middle, got a double grade A scoring chance. And I call that the Corey Perry because he used to do it all the time. And kind of one of the first players like 10, 12, 15 years ago that I saw do it. So anyway, yeah, good skill going on.
It's not that many years ago that they didn't allow players to toe drag in a game.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you just didn't do it.
Yeah. Except maybe down below the dots in the offensive zone, maybe.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's mainly Wally's point too. And I get that. And from my perspective, it's great. It is all about time and place and, time of the game, score of the game. You got to have those four things in your head as an offensive player all the time. And that was one of, Paul Maurice's post-game comments last night. He just felt like the Jets, with their big layoff, they were trying to do too much in tight places when they didn't have to. And they turned the puck over too much. So that would be probably one of the things to look for, them maybe playing, I won't say a safer, I'll say a smarter offensive game in game 2. They certainly started to ramp up their game as the game went on. It's going to be an interesting start to game 2 because they were clearly flat and disjointed in the first half of the game last night.
I got a question, Rick and Kim. I'm going to be blunt here watching the women's Dream Gap games. We've got a lot of players that can't skate, but there was one player, McNeil, that when you put up those names, Kim, of U.S. players, and we talk about Rebecca Johnson, but do you know anything about the McNeil girl that played with one of the teams? Because I saw in her what I call 4 out of 5 or skating, similar to some of the U.S. players who are so fast and small, and size isn't a factor. She's one player that, to me, watching that series, whenever I saw her, that skating stuck out for me, and it wasn't, just wasted speed. It was purposeful speed. So, anybody know anything about her?
Wally, I think she was in the Dream Gap. She was on Montreal.
Yep.
That's O'Neill, the little one.
Okay, thank you.
She's from Oakville. There is a Mackenzie McNeil who plays in NWHL who actually is a very Rebecca Johnson type skater. I coached her in midget, and she's has a beautiful stride. But O'Neill has that mix of shiftiness and speed, and it does look effortless. And they might list her at 5 feet tall, but she's tiny. I coached against her for a long time, and I coached her with. I think she was on Team Ontario Blue when I coached, but just makes it look effortless and is floating around the ice, I guess, is the way it looks. But she stood out in that Dream Gap. There was a lot of players there that stood out to me. Some that in watching their play there, I was a little surprised they didn't get the call for centralization, and then vice versa. But I won't name drop anyone here because I'm not that dumb. Even though I went to Dartmouth. I'm not that dumb. I want to share a clip though, Wally. I want to get your thoughts on this. We were talking about risk reward. So of course, if you're Poulin, you're like McDavid. You can do whatever you want. But let me see if I can find this. And can you guys see this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is shorthanded for Montreal here. So Poulin, I think she's coming out from the hash here, but we'll see in a second. She might be the centerman taking it, but I'll
She's the
just play
center.
it.
I think
Yeah.
she's the center.
Check out this risk. So I
Play it
found.
again. Kim, play it again. Please.
Oh, sorry. Now I gotta. Well, I'll get it back up here. Sorry. It made me laugh because, of course, you know, I do watch some NHL, and Bieksa was going on about Jason Spezza doing the same move in a Leafs game, and then I think the next night, Poulin did that, and I thought either she watched the Leafs game or Spezza's watching her. I'm not sure, but it was literally the same dot that she did it off of, and Jason didn't score either. But yeah, I'm a bit slow here, as Tim would attest to. Let's start showing it again.
I'm glad you're picking up on all this Dartmouth stuff.
Yeah, it's overeducated. I'm not using any of it. All right, so we'll let it go.
Yeah. So I would. I'm not sure that's high risk for me.
I was going to say the same thing.
I don't think so either. It's just it's unique. You don't you do see it, but it.
Tim, were they a man short?
Yeah, they're killing.
Yeah, it's high risk. They're a man short. They're trying to score a man short.
I would want her to, this is exactly what I would want her to do in this situation. She's covering that slot point. They're pushing down hard with their winger over the top. That's by design.
Yeah, well, that to me, and I'm not going to tell her that, but that's what I'm saying they do in the NHL. I don't think they would do that in the NHL. I think that is extremely risky, and I'm glad to see them doing that in today's game. And when I look at it, trying to score 4-on-4 after a face-off where you get 4 people low. Woo. Listen, I wanted to ask one player.
Wally, before we move on, I have to retort on that. This is exactly what she's supposed to do in that situation.
I agree.
And all the NHL teams do it. Or not all of them, lots of them.
When they're a man short?
They're a man short. Okay. They're pushing hard with either the wing or the center. They're going to go up and push hard down on the hash marks.
Yeah.
And Pooh's job there is to collapse into the slot and take away F3. That's exactly what she does. The error on this one for me is that the offensive player passed it right to her. Like if you look at it, both of the Montreal D have the 2 people covered down low.
Yeah.
Who has F3 covered? There's no place for that player to go. That's by design, and it's really well executed. And a lot of the NHL teams do it. Colorado, Vegas, St. Louis does it. I mean, there's any number of teams that really use that push down, over under, triangle +1 penalty killing. So that's what I would see on that clip. I think it's a great read, and a great execution of what they're supposed to do.
Well, my philosophy of penalty killing is you have your PK grunters out there in minor hockey, so they get a chance to play. So that's why I have that mentality. But I wanted to bring up one player, and Kim, I watched this series wanting to edit things that I felt were of an NHL performance standard, not necessarily the speed and quickness of execution, but the mindset within the thinking of the execution. So the link I send out supporting your link, 2 minutes and 45 seconds of highlights, there were 2 clips in there. And there was one on consecutive passes at the very beginning where, very rarely watching games do you see 2 or 3, more than 2 passes in a row. So I had one clip where there were 3 passes in a row moving up the length of the ice. Then the other one, and I think it's every bit an NHL goal, was Potomac's goal on a triple drive. when the pass went wide, winger to winger or player to player, she drove the middle, shot for a rebound, and she put it in. And I talked to Melody about, I phoned her and I said, Melody, what's happened to her? Like, I'm watching this game as a scout and say, she's not centralized. Like, she's the leading scorer in the tournament. And I said, just what I've seen today is like, oh boy, we've got to invite her. And she said, well, Wally, during the game, I said the same thing to my mom watching the game. I said, they're going to be thinking twice about her and she should be invited. She's just got hockey instincts and can score. So that really impressed me, that particular highlight. And then the winning goal for the final game, I highlighted it twice at the very end and in slow-mo. What Poulin did to get it to the middle driver, and then the shot and the rebound and the reflex to pick up the puck and cycle up the wall and find Poulin getting open in the pocket. That's classic. And that's what I'm looking for to happen in the female game more. And who's that big winger that played with Poulin that made that pass to her?
Eldridge, another Ontario kid.
Now I've got a question about her.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked this question saying, "Oh, skating, is Potomac skating a problem with one player? I think that might hold her back on big ice. But is Potomac skating a problem?
Potomac, the little one, the one who scored all the goals.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know what she brings in terms of like drive skating on the defensive side of the puck, but I don't know. Like if we're just talking like top end speed, getting in on F1. I mean, it doesn't jump out as a strength, but it doesn't jump out as a weakness. I think there's more question marks about Eldridge's top end speed. Obviously, they would fill very different roles in the national team program. I do think it's interesting looking at the roster. You look at big bodies, that are going to play more physical. You've got, Spooner and Stacy, and then it sort of, depending on whether Nurse plays the middle or not, you sort of drop down quite a bit. So it's an interesting spot for someone like Eldridge. And you wonder if a Potomac is, is she similar to I don't want to, pigeonhole people, but is she similar to someone like a Clark or a Bach or like a smaller body who can score, but, can she do it at the international level? I don't know the answer to that. But, Eldridge seems slightly more unique than them because of the size that she brings, and whether Canada values that or not. But I look at the forwards for Canada and I think, man, that they look pretty tiny to me. Based on the size, like what I know of them. If that means they're more skilled and they're going to move the pucks better, then maybe that's a good thing. But Eldridge has always been, ever since she was in Kiwi, she just like easily in the PWHL was a goal plus a game type of player, and continued that at Colgate when they won a bunch of championships. So I was happy to see her do so well. I've coached with her dad, who coached for a long time in the PW. So I was happy to see her have that level of success. I could see her raising some question marks as well, but I think Potomac was the one that stood out the most as not getting that opportunity.
Tim, your thoughts on Potomac? Do you know her from the past?
Yeah, I know both of them. Her younger sister's the bigger, really skilled forward. They're both very skilled players. They both have great, I will say, offensive hockey sense. Maybe not overall collective hockey sense. That's kind of been the, Amy, the younger one, I haven't seen her play for a number of years. She's a tremendously skilled player. Both of them are. The knock in the past has been, too much one-on-one play and not enough collective team play, making the right play at the right time. They're both great players, both great skills. I didn't see the unfortunately, I haven't seen yet the PWHPA games. I got them on my PVR, but they're both really skilled players, and it's kind of, again, it's a pick your poison. Like what is Gina and Troy? What are they looking for from their team? How many? What's the makeup of their team? Their style of play? The knock on Canada the last 10, 12 years has been too big, too physical, not fast enough, not skilled enough. So if they're sort of trying to morph or move to a faster, more skilled group, I think that's a good thing, myself. But, as we pointed out a couple of weeks ago, we can always debate the pros and cons of who should have been there, who might be there. But there are hard decisions for the staff. It sort of comes down to what's the vision you have for your team, and, what type of players do you need to fill that vision?
Yeah, just one point. The vision for one team, it's got to be the vision going up the ladder and all those qualities you're talking about. So to me, it's the whole long-term program. And one thing that Mel shared with me, the history of what happened with Potomac in terms of reaction to not making it the first time, and an injury affecting her. And she was so happy to see her play this well in this competition, because, how are you evaluating top players? And Mel made a good point about the staffs. When you think of it, for the Olympics, each one of the staffs could have been a head coach on that bench, getting to know what they've got and getting to assess things and getting experience. But she, like myself, all we think about is the program, bottom up, end in mind, world championships, but more important than that, the Olympics. So those are sort of big picture things. That's why I asked about the skating. And if a group of scouts were looking at Potomac, we'd have to see her play at a centralized camp to see how she performs competitively, even at practice. But Kim, you've got your hand up.
Well, the other one that stood out to me and was Gable, another one who didn't get centralized and maybe was surprised about that. Again, her ability to slow it down and understand when to do that. I mean, Poulin is one of the best in the world at that, but I thought Gable's ability to do that, I actually clipped out quite a few plays from her, and I don't think her skating is an issue. Again, maybe the drive skating, similar to Potomac, isn't, the same as like a Spooner, but, that's a different type of player. But Gable's ability to pull it back in all kinds of situations in the neutral zone. Again, the hockey IQ, I agree with you, Wally, is something that, and again, I watched Gable the whole time she was growing up as well in the PWHL, and there's just an elite ability there to dictate the pace of the game, and in an unselfish way, I think could only help. But the other one that stood out to me, and I don't know how much you watched the D's, was Ella Shelton, who I coached against, who was always great. And then you put her at this level, and that one-timer goal she scored off the east-west pass from Bach was one of the best goals I've seen scored in women's hockey in maybe forever. And she showed some great deception walking down the wall, getting wingers to bite and scored a goal there. So she was I saw her name on the centralization roster, and I haven't seen her play since she was in junior. And I thought, oh, great for her. And then when I was able to watch her, and it really reaffirmed why she's there. It was it's nice to see, but I don't know the ones from the other provinces as well, so I'm very Ontario biased, I have to admit. But there's definitely some that stood out. I thought, some of the goalies did pretty well too, considering they hadn't played a competitive game as well, and some really struggled. I thought that was a pretty significant piece of the puzzle as well.
Rick?
Yeah, it's interesting. I just point up the centralization roster and having, I've been at camps with everybody on the forward side, and Sarah Potomac was with us in Budapest in 2014. And so I would think that knowing those players, from my perspective, there might only be one in that group that I would take Sarah Potomac before, and maybe even Amy. Just there's a lot of speed there, and even the big players in that group of forwards are fast as well. And you brought up the idea of that there might be a speed issue with the Potomac sisters, and I think if there's in today's women's game at the top level, I think that's kind of their biggest weakness. And I know they bring a lot more to the table than that, but I think that would be the thing that would hold them back. Just only because Kim mentioned Blair Turnbull earlier, and while you and I were talking about, how do you give players a chance that don't rate high on the rating system, but can put the puck in the net all the time? I was my first camp Blair was at with the under 18 team, and she didn't make the under 18 national team in her last year of under 18, which it's kind of amazing that someone actually progresses now to one of the top players in that group. And I wonder how many players there are like that just slip through cracks or develop later, that we might miss as we go. And it's not just in the women's game, but in the men's game as well. When do you give the kid the chance, or the player the chance, to play at the next level when you don't think they can compete at that level, but if you gave them the chance, they might actually do that?
Kim?
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and I clipped a lot from Turnbull. And again, I only know her from watching her in Olympic games, which have been, or national team games, which have been few or far between. But her ability to impact every game that Calgary was in she was their driver. Johnson made great plays. Mickelson's obviously, great on the back end, but Turnbull, was the, Poulin of that team, right? Like, she was the reason they were competitive or in a lot of those. So, it's, and I don't know, I've never been a scout, how you rank that or how you quantify that, and maybe that's some of the things that are missing in some of those other players that we've indicated. I'm not sure, but, you wouldn't necessarily say Turnbull's got, some of the top end skill maybe that some of those other players have, but in her ability to change a game and make big plays happen, I think I missed part of one of the Calgary games, but she was, in my opinion, the player that did the most. Potomac obviously put the most pucks in the net, but Turnbull was the one who kind of, was the force driving behind it. So now, seeing her more, I can see exactly why she belongs in that group. And I think that's a challenging thing to gauge. And can you do it at the international stage? Obviously, she's proved that.
Yeah.
Just before we move on, Kim, the Turnbull, is she one of the players that didn't make it, Rick, and she stuck with it and is finally making it? Is that what you saw in her? Is she
When you do the math, right, about 1.5 players from any under 18 team each year makes the Olympics.
Yeah.
And so for someone who doesn't make the under 18 team to be in Olympic Games certainly beats the statistics. And just before we move on, I did want to just mention Kristen O'Neill, who, with the development team a couple summers ago, as a sophomore at Cornell, was one of the top players in that group, and I think brings a lot of leadership to the ice as well. But I saw her play what was it? I guess 2 Januaries ago at Cornell, and at that level, she was just totally at a next level of all those players on the ice. And there was there was a lot of good players on the ice, and she was unbelievably outstanding.
Well, I thought she was at the next level this weekend. She didn't get to play much, but I saw enough in her where if I'm going to watch her again and again, I'm going to tell people so they'll watch her again and again. Because what happens in the scouting process, with our scouts, we would watch them play, and if somebody didn't get advocated for and you stuck up for her, and I can go back to the days of Dana Antel being considered to be released, and I stuck up for her. I spoke out very strongly because of her skill level. She was the most skilled player we had. And they stuck with it. So what happens in decision-making proceedings, as a group of scouts, we sit there and one thing Turnbull had to have is intangibles. Work hard, team first, willing to put in the hours and hours to commit for two Olympics, so to speak, if she's going to be around. And tracking those qualities from under 18, all the traits, and scoring them on a scaled to under 22, under 18, you can get a picture. Rebecca Johnson was a 4.5 skater when she was 18 out of 5. So we had a good idea of who the people were that were moving up the ladder. And the package I sent to you on evaluation for development, Rick, I highlighted in yellow that the most important of all the traits is intangibles, because they're all pretty close. They're all pretty good. But who's going to pay the price for minimum of 12 years of their life trying out under 18? You want them for 2 Olympics. So, Tim?
Yeah, I was just going to add, and I totally agree, Wally, the intangible piece is really huge. I think we'd all agree on that. And I think carefully evaluated, like to Kim's point or question, how do you place a value on, somebody like Blair, who's a driver, who's a momentum changer. I think we place a high value on that, or most coaches do. And I'm sure the Hockey Canada people do as well. Like, even though she's maybe not the most skilled player, I'll say this, and sort of to Rick's point, I'll say this in Blair's, defense or to defend. She was always a good player or a very good player. When she was at U18 level, she was an in between sort of good, very good, and a really good, great player. And so in some ways, I can see how she maybe didn't quite get there as a U18, but it's a real credit to her that she stuck with it, gotten a bit physically stronger, fitter, skating even a different notch. And I think she really raised her game when she played for Thomas with the Inferno. For me, that was kind of a shift. And watching her play then, kind of like, oh, wow, like she's really developing some other elements to her game. So she stuck with it, and there's no telling really beforehand who's going to have the wherewithal to stick with it and change their game and change their bodies the way Blair has. It's a tough thing to sort of look into the future and see who's going to be able to do that. But for sure, people who drive the game, make things happen, or momentum changers are really valuable to, I would think, all teams, and all teams would want to have 2 or 3 people minimum like that who may not be, particularly highly skilled or particularly good goal scorers. They'll contribute in other ways.
I got a question about Turnbull, Kim, before I turn to you. How would all those of you that know her or watch her, on a scale of 1 to 5, 3 being average, senior national world team, how would you rank her hockey sense, offensive hockey sense? Would you be an average senior player? Would she be a 2.5, below average? Would she be a 3.5, above average?
I haven't seen her a lot. Based on what I saw, I'd say she's above average, but there were and there are players who are quite a bit ahead of her. Like, again, I'm using a very small subset of data, so you would know better than me, but yeah, I wouldn't say she would be average based on that group. And again, the majority of that group was playing over the past week. So yeah, just on the offensive side of the puck. I wouldn't say she's below. She would be at least average, if not slightly above.
I would agree with that, Kim. Like, and I haven't seen her play a lot either, but that's one of the things I think she really took a step up in when, especially when she played with Thomas with the Inferno. So I might give her like a 3.5. Like she's not a hockey sense player, but I think she's a smart player and she sees lots of good things offensively. So I totally agree. Not below average.
What about defensive hockey sense?
And maybe slightly above average. And I'd probably say the same defensively. And again, I haven't seen her play a lot for 2 or 3 years. So just
the reason I did that, and Rick, that evaluation for development, the scouts watched every practice, every game, and debated those scores. And we had to agree within 2/10 before we left the room on a trait. So that's the kind of thinking, attending every under 18 camp and competition, under 22 camp and competition. And when we scored it, a group of gentlemen and a few women that were in the scouting group, we had worked together long enough to argue about things, sort of like Tim and I. We have our thoughts and our biases, and everybody does. But as much as possible, you have to stand up for what you think of a player. And most scouts are biased by their regions, and I knew that, being the head scout. And I would be really hard on Brian's scouting of Ontario, because I know Brian likes a complete player who's going to play a price and be honest. And I would argue that, everybody participated in them. And that's my whole point. It's not just selecting this team right now. They're going to go to the Olympics, but it's a long-term program. Long-term program. So, Tim, you're going to head off to Copenhagen. I want to wish you well. Stay in touch if you can join us. And if we can get Peter on again, I'm going to watch Cider at noon today. And
Peter had his hip replaced yesterday, so I talked to him Tuesday, and he was going to try to get on if he was coherent today. But I see that he threw a little quick chat in real early on, but then he disappeared. So anyway, I'm not sure how it'll work. I think it'll be tough next week. We're very likely going to be on the ice practicing or getting ready to, but we'll jump on to say hi if we can. So another good session. Thanks, ladies and germs. Good to see Sammy even briefly.
Yeah.
So have a good one.
Okay.
Good luck, Tim.
Yeah, good luck.
Kim, did you have any other thoughts, Kim?
I did. I was going through my clips, and I thought I would weigh in on a couple other players. One was Jamie Lee Rattray, who I think, if you're talking about players who've sort of been on the outside looking in, looking to make an impact, she would be one. A bigger size forward who I think, I don't know her that well personally. I have coached her, but she seems to have she just plays with joy, like this fierce joy. I don't know how to explain it, but there's just this energy pill, and she can score, and she's got size, and she can drive skate, and she's definitely even, I think I coached or helped with Team Ontario way back in the day when she was on there. And she seems to have really transformed her game and continued to do so without necessarily, even making that senior national team level very often. So I like to celebrate the players like that. The other one that always sticks out to me, and I don't know gets enough love, is Jenner, and I would guess she's a lock at that level for that team. But I mean, her ability to just, I think people wonder why sometimes she doesn't do more, but she reminds me a lot of Bots and the way she controls the game and she supports her teammates. And, I noticed in the commentating, sometimes, there was a question mark of whether she should be doing more, contributing more. And I thought, she does what she does extraordinarily well, and she's a player you don't see ever make a mistake. But isn't necessarily a human highlight reel. And those two played together for a lot of the Dream Cup tour, and they really stood out to me. And then again, the D's, the D's that they centralized to me, like, seemed pretty straightforward. I could see Laquette, maybe showing a little bit of her frustration in not getting chosen, but the ones who are on that list sure looked good in terms of their performance as part of the tour. So, I've never been in the position to select any of these teams. I'm excited to see the way it plays out because, a kid like O'Neill, who's not a kid anymore, but will always be, probably 16 in my head. There just might not be enough spots. But what an extreme
you
talent.
don't pick the team before you centralize.
Oh, for sure. And I'm
Is she good
fascinated.
enough? My point is she good enough to be centralized?
Absolutely.
That's
She is centralized. O'Neill's on the centralization list.
Well, I
Yeah.
didn't know that. I had no idea.
Yeah,
But
she's
the
there.
fact
But
she is, kudos to the selection committee, because I didn't see her get as much ice time at critical times. I didn't see her as much. When I saw her, every shift I saw her, she showed so much that I wondered about her. So I'm really glad. Now, one thing I'm gonna just, both you and Rick, the players you've talked about, over the years I've scouted them and rated them, and our scouting staff has scouted them and rated them in traits. And we argued about those traits, and I can understand where they're weak and where they're strong. And we know what their strengths were. Neither of them are great skaters. They're not fast. They don't gain space with skating. What do they need to do to improve to get better? Not just make the team and be a first line player because I can score and I'm smart. Every player from top down has strengths and areas for improvement. We provided a personal improvement plan with Rattray. I think of McKinnon, size, power, strength. And I think of McDavid, edge work, changing a direction, quick control. Can she be better? What can she do? We provided plans for them to follow. Same with Jenner. Every single player got a personal improvement plan. And they get it when they're on the under 18 team. Because are they just going to be the same player that does the same thing the same way at the same level? Or you're getting the same result when you approach it that way? You're not getting the success. You're not showing the improvement. So I talk about my disappointment in the program, it's become short term, pick it now, the best team now, try to win the game now. And this maybe starts too soon. Under 18, there isn't enough focus on development. Focus on winning and picking the best right now. Not what are we doing, the coaches doing to be better at developing what they need to in those players. That's what it's all about to me. But Tom Malloy, you got your hand up, I see, or maybe you left it up. I don't know. Tom?
Oh, I got my hand up. No, this is just the stuff I've been doing this week. I go through my stuff, and right now I'm posting a lot of stuff that the Czechs do on and off ice and the Slovaks. And, it's on that Facebook coaching page. But I think it's, really worthwhile to look at because they do some stuff pretty different than we do stuff.
Tom, what era is that from? What period? Those videos.
From the last 5-6 years.
Okay. Because I've seen some amazing stuff from the Czechs in youth hockey.
Well, I posted one thing. Bukoch runs a off ice thing, and they're in a gym and they're outside doing all kinds of exercises,
Yeah.
skill and strength kind of things. And Bukoch Jr.
Yeah.
And he's kind of taken over from his dad. And there's just a lot of really good stuff there. Just thought I'd mention it.
See, I think that's the thing about the national team as a program. Starting young, moving up a ladder, they can impose things. They're carded. They're given some financial support to get better. So it's not on the players as much as it is on what we do to help them get better. And
Well, I don't know. You get to McDavid, and he went in his front driveway and made himself a good player. 2 hours a day, he worked on stuff. He invented that thing, jumping over all that, because he set up little circuits in his own driveway. So
Did
it seems
Quinn-
that
did
great
not-
players do it
did-
on their own.
did Quinn work with him as a 10-year-old?
I don't know. I know that I was just hearing his dad being interviewed, and he said neighbors had come up to him and say, you shouldn't make him go in the work like that. And he said, I have nothing to do with it. I suggest that he do something else. And he says, no, I'm going to do this for 2 hours. He was driven his own personal thing. And I think that most of the great players,
He had the drive.
Gretzky was the same thing.
Yep.
Even Danny Heatley, Mark is the same size and he's still playing Div 2 in Germany.
Yep.
And those Koreans, Danny had skate every afternoon for 8 years with him.
Yep.
And I call Mike or I talk to Mark and say, well, Mark, you can come out if you want to. He say, well, maybe tomorrow. I don't even know if he ever came out once. But Danny had called me up. He said, Coach, you got ice? That was our conversation.
Yeah.
I tell him where I had ice. And
Yeah,
he'd come out, even if 14-year-olds, he'd come on skate with them. And
That's intangibles, Tom.
himself.
They have it. And Daryl
Yeah.
Belfry's working with the best of the best with those intangibles. So, Rick?
I just, they're going to deliver a dryer to my home in a few minutes and I need to go.
Okay.
Hey,
Well,
listen, Wally, this has been terrific. I really appreciate the invite.
Join us anytime, Rick. I'm going to make sure Doug Shepard's on next week. Really a good guy, been around the horn.
I know Doug well.
Yeah. So I'm curious about, my questions are related to what do you look for in a player? How important are intangibles? How would you select them? And what he sees in terms of, why does